Part 73. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 726. At the same time, Yilin did not dare to stay too long in other people's territory. Confidence is a good thing, but if Yilin doesn't take everyone seriously, it's not self-confidence, but arrogance. In addition to the advantages of having a slightly higher spiritual energy value, a bit more skills, a bit stronger abilities, etc., Yilin still has some disadvantages compared to the veterans who have been at the top of the world rankings for many years. Small distance. The difference lies in the background. There is no weak person who can survive all the way to the present in the era of great waves. Yilin rushed to the spot where Cecilia was shot and fell as quickly as possible, but was surprised to find that there was only a blood-stained cloak on the ground and nothing else. Ran away. To be honest, Yilin was a little surprised. The female magician seemed to perform a large-scale escape magic in front of everyone and disappeared without a trace. At this time, Cerberus came in a hurry. The city is filled with the sounds of chaos. Many soldiers began to take action. After a short period of confusion, they searched for traces of Yilin and others in the streets and alleys of Hongfa City. Yilin and Cerberus were too conspicuous, and it was difficult to hide them. So after Cerberus arrived, the two of them looked at each other, without discussing or saying anything, and left Munich as quickly as possible before the encirclement net was formed. Half an hour later, several people reunited on a hillside 2 kilometers outside Munich. Miriam sat on the ground, her hair drooping, and her expression was a bit depressed. "It's not your fault." Yilin noticed Miriam's expression and comforted her. "It was our mutual decision to let you stay there." In the city hall, after Yilin arrogantly threw baskets of smoke bombs, everyone's vision was shrouded in the fog of war. Yilin took the opportunity to send a message to Miriam, asking her to wait in the designated direction and wait for Cecilia to come to her door. At that time, if the plan goes well, Yilin and Miriam will form two sides sandwiching cheese, directly blocking Cecilia's escape route. "I told you, she is a very high-level magician," Griffin added with a stern face. "It seems you know a lot." Yilin squinted her eyes, smiled kindly, and looked at Griffin. "Since you know she is an excellent magician, why didn't you tell her what type of magic she knows? The means of escape must be the replacement magic of the Ainsworth family, right? This kind of magic is extremely niche, and only a few people use it. Why don't you tell me such important information?" In a certain magic book, Yilin remembered that similar deeds were recorded in it. There once was a magician named Darius Ainsworth who lived more than 1,000 years ago. At that time, magic was declining, mystery was gradually disappearing, and science was on the rise. Darius Ainsworth used the guise of magic to perform magic openly and openly. He was a slightly famous tramp entertainer at the time. What he is most proficient in, and no one in the clock tower can surpass in this aspect so far, is displacement magic. An evaluation in a certain book said that the scope, precision, and scale of his substitution magic have exceeded the concept of ordinary magic and have almost reached the realm of pseudo-magic. Yilin was at the scene and noticed the traces left by the magic. If not, Yilin might have thought that the female magician had used some kind of space transfer apostle skill. Of course, this possibility cannot be completely ruled out. Cecilia only avoided Yilin's sight for a few seconds. If she only used magic to explain it, unless the other person's magic skills were really terrifying, it would be outrageous. Displacement magic. Cerberus frowned slightly, and she looked at Griffin. It seemed, from the look on her expression, that Cerberus didn't know about it either. Mystery should remain hidden. Griffin knew that Yilin's words meant to blame her for concealing information. She smiled coldly without any guilt, and replied with a look, "I don't think you fully understand the meaning of this sentence. Appreciate further details." This principle is not only applicable to the rules for magicians to act externally. It is also an iron law that remains unchanged for thousands of years for magicians themselves. The essence of magic lies in mystery. Once the trick is exposed, magic will become worthless. How to hide one's own magical nature and hide one's strength is a required course for every outstanding magician in the clock tower. The information we have only knows that she is proficient in the magic seal inherited by Einstein angel poem, the magic she deliberately concealed, we have no way of knowing. Cerberus sighed softly. She lowered her head and bent down to apologize to Yilin. What she actually means is that half-baked information is misleading to you. But no matter what, I'm sorry about this. Hearing this, Yilin closed her eyes and stopped staring at Griffin with kind eyes. Cerberus was right. The uncertain information was indeed misleading to Yilin. He was thinking about the brief confrontation with Cecilia not long ago. Angel poem, displacement magic. What is certain so far is that she should be proficient in these two types of magic. After a moment, Yilin said, her movements when dodging my bullets were a bit unnatural, and it felt to me as if at that moment, her nervous reaction had greatly improved in a short period of time. Yilin looked at Cerberus. If I remember correctly, enhanced magic puts a huge burden on the magician's body, right? Cerberus nodded, yes. Can an orthodox magician really be proficient in many types of magic? Cerberus replied, it's not surprising if you just dabble. But it's difficult to reach the level of mastery. Unless what? Griffin glanced at Yilin in surprise. She didn't expect that Yilin, a half-time magician who had become a monk on the way, could actually discuss academic issues with these two serious senior magicians without appearing to be a novice. But her surprise did not show too much on her face. Griffin looked away. When Cerberus hesitated, Griffin replied indifferently, humph, unless she has more than one magic mark on her body. What about the magic circuit? Yilin frowned. It's not surprising that magic engravings can be obtained by gifts. However, a magician's magic circuit needs a long period of transformation to form something similar to an organ. Exist. The same person has so many different types of magic markings. Is this technically possible? Cerberus was just about to say something. Griffin said quickly, actually, you missed a little bit. As he spoke, Griffin took out a jet black bullet from the magazine on his waist. She quickly stuffed the bullet into the single-shot magazine, loaded it with a click, and fired at a rock next to her. Boom! The gunfire rang out, and the bullets penetrated the innocent stone on the roadside, raising the powder. Griffin did not explain why she fired an unprovoked shot at the roadside. She pointed at the stone and said, "You'll understand when you look at it." Hearing this, Yilin silently stepped forward. 3 seconds later, he was surprised to find that the area on the stone where he had been shot was turning into fine sand at a speed visible to the naked eye, sliding down to the ground bit by bit. Magic. Yilin could tell at a glance that this bullet was unusual. Griffin raised his chin and explained, "This is my special Hokai bomb, which is specially made from my hair. Whether it is a living thing or a dead thing, the moment it is shot, the corresponding content in the bullet will disintegration magic can quickly disintegrate its links from the microscopic level of cells and molecules." Haha. Griffin smiled coldly, "Everyone who is shot by me will die from the collapse." Yilin leisurely took out the blood-stained cloak and waved it in front of Griffin, "But she seems to be fine." Griffin. At that moment, the short-legged girl felt as if there was a lump of old phlegm stuck in her throat. She couldn't spit it out quickly but couldn't. Yilin finally succeeded in confronting the arrogant Griffin. Feeling much better. But at the same time, Yilin also understood what Griffin wanted to express. In addition to angel poem, displacement magic, and strengthening magic, Cecilia is also proficient in a magic. This magic is enough to allow her to escape from the red-haired city unharmed even after being hit by Griffin's Honkai bomb. The magician is on his own territory. Once he starts to flutter, it will be really difficult. Yulin understands that magic is a technology that has its limitations. But Yulin does not deny that this technology is diverse, complicated, and unpredictable. None of the magicians in the clock tower are apostles, but once they use magic to perform tricks, they have a fighting power that is not inferior to that of high-level apostles, which is very terrifying. After a brief summary, Myrian tugged on Yulin's sleeve and remained silent. Hungry? Yulin asked. Miriam nodded vigorously. In fact, she wasn't that hungry. But now I have nothing to do but want to eat. Yulin stared at the dull hair on the other person's forehead and read Myrian's thoughts. He lowered his head to check the inventory. During the few days on the boat, Yulin had accumulated a lot of seafood through skilled fishing techniques. He skillfully set up a bonfire and had a seafood barbecue. Fortunately, after being busy for a long time, it is now time to eat. Myrian is like an alarm clock. When the time comes, she will proactively give you meal reminders, which is very considerate. The best cuisine often only requires the simplest cooking methods. Yulin was too lazy to put so much thought into it this time. After roasting it, she sprinkled it with cumin and Lin brand spices and it was done. There was a flash of light on the food. Oh, it has attributes again. But maybe it's because Yulin didn't put too much thought and soul into it. The attributes that appear in the dishes are all indifferent, and there is not much difference between having them and not having them. When several people gathered around a campfire and happily ate a sumptuous seafood barbecue, Yulin asked about the information related to Myrian and the red hair. Yulin is now very familiar with the arrogant King of Knights. She also knew very well that she would tell the King of Knights all the things she couldn't ask about normally when he was eating, and would even take the initiative to add to them. Really? Miriam, whose mouth was full of seafood juice, not only answered the red-haired person's information, but also took the initiative to be a chatterbox and mention things related to this country. After the arrival of the Four Towers, the response strategies of European countries were slightly different from those in Yulin. In Yulin, in order to meet the summoning conditions, more talents who can be summoned are selected. The 5 major families in the Z5 Council decided to add martial arts classes and popularize ancient martial arts fitness, hoping to use this method to improve the physical fitness of all residents. At the same time, a special group was established to maintain peace and order on the surface, and strive to keep all tower-related incidents out of the sight of civilians. European countries are different. There are many ancient mysterious forces in Europe, but these mysteries have always been hidden in daily life. But when the tower descended, the first apostle with special skills appeared, and also entered the vision of top politicians in European countries. As time goes by, various countries are secretly cultivating high-level apostles, and these apostles have become a presence in every country, similar to humanoid nuclear bombs, with a certain deterrent effect. Because the apostle's ability is weird and difficult to prevent, compared with the conditions that a magician needs to learn a lot of knowledge, pass it on from generation to generation, and cultivate the family, the growth of an apostle can be said to be quick success. This kind of master who can achieve quick success has quickly become the new favorite of politicians, recruiting them with various benefits and conditions and high salary. No matter which country's politicians they are, they don't want to sleep well one day, and suddenly someone appears in the room and stabs them in the forehead. It is precisely because of the appearance of the apostles that subtle changes have occurred in the structure of many European countries. What determines a country's right to speak is no longer superficial factors such as technology, economy, and material level. It is the number of high-ranking apostles, which will largely determine a country's influence in Europe. For most politicians in Europe, do their own lives take precedence over their country? Yulin thought for a moment and soon understood the reason for this abnormal worldview. And Miriam also mentioned that the red-haired one, Joe D. Solomon, was a bodyguard next to a certain politician before the call of the people, serving the politician attentively. Yulin roughly understood the environment of this district server and the apostle circle hidden in the dark side. After thinking for a moment, Yilin remembered the moment when she confronted the red hair in the city hall not long ago. I would like to ask, by the way, as far as you know, in your server, is there anyone who is particularly good at hiding or assassinating? Someone who is very high on the list. Miriam almost destroyed the seafood on the barbecue grill, and her mind became clearer. She was also curious why Yilin suddenly mentioned this matter. Forget it, it's nothing. Just curious. Yilin glanced at Cerberus and Griffin quickly, smiled slightly, and stopped dwelling on this matter. After eating and drinking, Sasaya, who was finally found, ran away again. Yilin and others lost their target. Europe is a huge territory, and no one knows where Cecilia will hide. Speaking of which, how did you guess that she was hiding in the city hall? Griffin asked, remembering the incident. It's half reasoning and half guessing. I just think that since Cecilia deceived the red-haired man, the red-haired man is not that stupid. With the strong character he shows, it is very likely that he will let Cecilia go. It's within sight, otherwise he wouldn't be at ease. After a little bluffing at the time, I was even more certain about it. Moreover, I knew at that time that he was hiding a lot of people in the city hall. I was helpless and had no choice but to strike first. In fact, I was forced and there was nothing I could do. Yilin finished speaking. Everyone, including Gu Tianqing, had strange expressions. The more I get to know this person, the more I wonder, how on earth did you manage to talk about this matter so smoothly and flawlessly in such a naturally innocent tone? Griffin stared, feeling very incredible about Yilin's character. What do we do next? Cerberus looked at Yilin. Just wait. Yilin skillfully skewered the fresh seafood on the bonfire, squinted her eyes and smiled. If I guess correctly, someone will take the initiative to lead the way soon. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 727. Dusk is approaching. It's getting late. Yilin extinguished the bonfire, and a few people waited on the hillside with their eyes closed and calm. The reason why he put out the bonfire was not because he was afraid that the bonfire would reveal their location. Simply because everyone is full and can save some wood. Moreover, Hungfa himself probably never expected that they would squat leisurely a few kilometers away from Hungfa City, happily having a picnic. A few hours have passed since the Red Hair City explosion incident. The noise coming from the city gradually subsided. The strange thing is that the red-haired man only ordered people to search in the city and did not arrange any arrangements outside the city. It seems that he also understands that with the strength shown by Yilin, he really ran outside the city, and there is no point in searching. Either it's a waste of manpower and material resources, or it's death. If Yilin still dares to stay in the city, the red hair will still be confident to kill again. After all, he is the 58th top senior player in the world and has full confidence in his own strength. When a few stars appeared in the night sky, Yilin, who was reading with his head down, suddenly raised his head. Coming. He closed the book, patted Cerberus beside him, and said with a smile, "Come on, open your eyes and take a look." Cerberus was not dissatisfied with Yilin using her as an eye. She obediently pulled up her blindfold and looked in the direction Yilin pointed, that is, where the red-haired city is. After a moment, Cerberus looked a little more surprised. Red hair, he really left the city. How do you know? Griffin glared at Yilin, unable to understand how Yilin expected that the red-haired man would know how to track Cecilia. Yilin ignored the short-legged Griffin. Instead, he looked at Cerberus's green artificial magic eye and smiled. "I said I guessed it, do you believe it?" Cerberus was silent. After a few seconds, Cerberus slowly shook his head, expressing disbelief. Actually, most things are not pure coincidences or groundless speculations. They are inevitable, intertwined with countless clues. In fact, the reason is too simple, and I am too lazy to explain. Let's go and follow them secretly. Yilin called Myrian and Gu Tianqing to stand up. Far away, led by the red-haired man, he led hundreds of soldiers wearing black night uniforms, all riding modified off-road motorcycles and heading out of the city in a mighty manner. Under the moonlight, that red curly hair looked so dazzling and eye-catching. Even without Cerberus' artificial magic eyes, Yilin could still distinguish the red light faintly in the darkness. You should wear a hat. As for the color of the hat, you have the final say if your hair is long. Yilin called the redhead from the air and sneered. He waved his hand and summoned the night dyer. Gu Tianqing lowered his head and took out the skateboard. In fact, he felt something was wrong from the beginning. After Yilin came out of the clock tower, she behaved a little strangely. When he took out the jet skateboard, he couldn't help but lower his head and send a private message to Yilin. Yilin's chest shook several times. Gu Tianqing sent a private message. Yilin glanced at the message quietly at an extremely fast speed, but did not reply. Only from an angle invisible to Cerberus and Griffin, Yilin took advantage of the moment she got into the car to make eye contact with Gu Tianqing for a moment, and raised an index finger to her mouth. Shhh. Yilin is also not a good at predicting things. He is human. What he didn't expect was that this chase would turn into a long journey. Red Hair took a group of his men to a train station in the German Republic. They just stepped onto the train, and drove off. Yilin and others followed the Red Hair all the way, watching the train roaring and speeding, with confused expressions on their faces. What to do? Miriam stared. At that time, she wished she could cut off the railway with a sword. What should I do? It's cool, let's chase him. Yilin sighed. Along the railway track, Yilin and his party rode their respective mounts and walked in the wilderness. They crossed mountains and rivers. Pass the river. Swim in the Mediterranean Sea. Chase and play among the standing stone statues with human faces. In the jungle, have a picnic. The red-haired group walked and stopped, changing trains several times along the way. Finally, in the Turkish Empire, Yilin and others slept in the open for half a month before finally catching up with the red hair. A whole half a month. Yilin regretted it. No one knows how he survived the past half month. When he was in Hating City, he would cook every day just for Schwer's meals, which made his scalp numb. Now, Yilin looked at Miriam beside her, who was working hard and had dull hair on her forehead. She always felt that he had suffered a big loss during this cross-region trip. On the way, Gu Tianqing actually wanted to find an excuse to escape. The reason he used was also very simple and irrefutable. My temporary passes are almost used up, so. But at that time, Gu Tianqing hadn't finished speaking. Miriam thrust a card towards Gu Tianqing in a friendly manner, and said with an apology, "Sorry, Mr. Gu, don't worry, I still have the pass." Yilin probably will never forget it in her life. The eternal fake smile on Gu Tianqing's face showed a moment of stiffness. It was with great difficulty, reluctance, and helplessness that he finally stopped smiling and took the epic prop with trembling hands. Yilin speculated that Gu Tianqing was extremely happy at that time. In Turkey, the war is spreading and everything is dying. This is a country where order has completely collapsed and has completely fallen into war. The Apostles' rampage can be seen everywhere in this country. During this journey, after a series of encounters, several people from different places became familiar with each other a lot. Time and experience can change many things. At the very least, Griffin, who had always treated Cerberus with a stern face, could communicate with Cerberus normally to a certain extent. The redhead killed a lot of people. 10 minutes ago, the red hair rushed into a small town, and it only took 10 minutes for him to come out covered in blood. Cerberus put his blindfold back on and reported back to Yilin. "I saw it. He must have been holding it back all the way." "Huh? Why is he tattooed on his back?" Yulin held up the telescope, and when Cerberus looked far away with his artificial magic eye, he was also observing the movements of the small town in the distance. He didn't dare to get too close to the red-haired team for fear of being discovered. In order not to rely too much on Cerberus' artificial magic eyes, Yulin happened to see a passerby holding a telescope while crossing the European border to peek at such evil things. Seeing the injustice, Yulin snatched the telescope and did a good deed, which earned him some merit. Yulin stared into the distance. Unblinking eyes. Cerberus's eyes were, after all, information relayed by a third party. More accurate information is never as good as seeing it with your own eyes. At this time, next to the red hair, a strange smoke filled the air. A woman with short blonde hair and a scar on her face walked out of the smoke with a long pipe in her mouth. When Yulin saw this scene, her eyes narrowed and she held her breath to peek. Yulin noticed that when the woman appeared, the red-haired man's arrogance seemed to be a little weaker. The redhead saluted the woman with a military salute. The redhead talks to the blonde woman. Their lips moved and they spoke very fast. The woman's expression looked a bit excited, and her face was flushed. But around her, the smoke was thick and looming, and Yulin couldn't see it so clearly. If it weren't for the fact that it was still daytime, even if the mother spirit was thrown out, it would be very conspicuous. Yulin should really throw Bai Xiaoi out as a scout. Suddenly, the scarred-faced blonde who was talking to the redhead paused for a moment while smoking and frowned. When Yulin saw it, she felt bad. She quickly looked away and covered Cerberus's artificial magic eye. Go. Back away. With a flick of her finger, Yulin hit a small crystal on a nearby tree and quickly told the others to stay away. Cerberus, Griffin, Miriam, and Gu Tianqing, although they didn't know what Yulin meant by this move. But along the way, Yulin seemed to be like the leader of the tour group. Whenever he spoke, the others would subconsciously follow his instructions and immediately escape as fast as possible into the distance. Fortunately, these people were not ordinary people. In just 1 minute, they ran several kilometers away. Yulin ran the fastest. He almost floated away without even touching the ground. It was about a few minutes after Yulin and his party left the peeping place. A strange feeling appeared out of thin air from one of the small dots, and then spread. The governor of Bor, wearing thick military boots and chewing a long pipe, walked out of the smoke. She frowned, looking around for a moment as the smoke swirled around her. Is it my imagination? The Grand Governor of Bor was in the same place, murmuring in a low voice and talking to himself. But apart from saying these words, there was no other voice. After a while, she banged her pipe beside her, then backed away, disappearing in the smoke as strangely as when she came. Miles away, Yulin held up the communication crystal and put it to her ear. Is it my imagination? The woman's voice came through the communication crystal. After a long time, there was no other sound. Pity. Yulin put the crystal into the storage space. The other party was also a cautious person and did not reveal more information by talking to himself. Seeing that Yulin's expression relaxed, Griffin quickly asked what happened just now. However, Yulin took out a bunch of carded seafood barbecue skewers from the storage space with the additional property of increasing seafood flavor and body fragrance and stuffed them into Miriam's hand. When Miriam saw it, she felt that she was not feeling well. This is her favorite food. It is sprinkled with cumin and Rin's brand food, and the best food produced by Rin's sole cooking technique is unique in the world. As for increasing seafood scent, Miriam didn't care about it, as long as it didn't stink. As a proud king of knights, he shouldn't care about such details. As Miriam ate the barbecue skewers, a pleasant smell began to waft from her body. At first, Yulin was also curious about what seafood body fragrance meant. Now he understands. It turns out to be the smell of the sea. It doesn't smell bad either. While Miriam was eating, Yulin described the woman's appearance to Miriam in detail. Short blonde hair, scars on face, military uniform, smoking. These key points seem to be very personal. Miriam suddenly paused while nibbling on the seafood skewers. Is her? Sure enough, you know him. Yulin knew that although Miriam was usually silent, as the president of the first guild server in the Tower of War, she should know a lot of information about the masters. Miriam nodded. As a foodie, she always knew everything about Yulin's questions and took the initiative to provide additional explanations. 5 years ago. Miriam recounted a piece of well-known history. 5 years ago, a change broke out in the German Republic. That change was called Bloody August in the history of that country. It is said that the person who triggered that change was just a 16-year-old girl. Overnight, the country's top politicians, the federal president, and members of the Senate all died tragically. And that little girl, overnight, conquered an army and turned that country into her empire. At the age of 16, she called herself the Grand Governor and ruled the country. What Miriam said is history that can be recorded. But only the little girl knew the details of that night. After all, she was the only one who survived the change. Pole Sebastian. Finally, Miriam elegantly took out a small silk scarf, wiped her mouth, and said the woman's name. Yulin looked at the world rankings. This person was not found. Name hidden. In fact, most of the purpose of this ranking is to see your own ranking. 80% of the people on the ranking list have hidden their information. The higher the ranking, the more so. Everyone seems to understand the principle of big trees attract the wind. You're saying that the German Republic is actually led by a 21-year-old female apostle? Yes. Miriam nodded. Yulin sighed, the abnormality of the world. Although the Grand Governor of Bor hid information on the leaderboard. But the red hair has a name on it. Judging from Hungfa's attitude towards Governor Ball's ranking, according to Yulin's speculation, is likely to be higher than Hungfa's. Moreover, the elusive method seems to be the type that is good at stealth assassination. It is somewhat similar to the strengthening route that Yulin once took. She had become an apostle 5 years ago, so her qualifications can be called ancient. It's hard to imagine how many cruel trials she has gone through since she became an apostle 5 years ago and has lived till now. You mean, she was here just now? Miriam finished eating, replenished a lot of energy, and her mind was much clearer. Things are far more troublesome than imagined. Yulin lowered her head and glanced at Miriam. He was very curious. If he retreated and teleported back to his own territory, Miriam would kill Shanghai Ting City with her sword again, looking for an explanation. Never mind. Yulin thought of Miriam's stubborn and unyielding character, and quickly gave up the idea of sneaking away. He understood the clock tower's situation more and more. If Yulin was still alone and found a place to hide, it was guaranteed that Miriam would find him forever and she would not be able to pull him out of the vast sea of people. But Hating City was different. It was a fixed station and could not be moved. This really made Miriam angry. She used her big move at the Great Engineer Tower to destroy several swords. With Miriam's power enough to easily penetrate the subspace with one sword, the camouflage canopy of the Engineer Tower really couldn't withstand a few pokes from Miriam. Damn Don cult. Yulin remembered the cause of all the incidents and felt itchy with hatred. If it hadn't been for that incident at the beginning, Yulin wouldn't have gotten involved in the Tower of War thing. It's too far from the clock tower. When he was about to set off again, Cerberus approached Yulin, covered his left eye, and whispered, "My artificial magic eye's ability has declined." Really? Yulin calmly blinked at Cerberus and reassured, "It's okay, it will get better." Some people always say to open a new dungeon quickly, but has no one discovered that the plot of this journey is already in the dungeon? The clouds are deep and I don't know where I am. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 728. This is an ancient small city. UK. UK is located in a basin and is surrounded by mountains. Branch rivers branched from the Euphrates and Tigris rivers pass through the town and merge into a small lake. Before the war broke out, this was also a poor town. The locals with sallow skin have empty eyes and indifferent faces. They were dressed in rags, lying, sitting, or sleeping on the roadside, on rooftops, and on the river banks. There are more people hiding in the shadows that can bring them a sense of security, hiding quietly, looking at everything in front of them with dull eyes. Before. There was once a boring geographer who explored the reasons for the formation of the UK town basin. Some people say that this was formed by the subsidence of the ground where the entire town is located after the bottom crust changed. Some people say that there is a rich underground river system under the town. Over time, it moistens things silently, and the ground gradually sinks, forming this landform. Some people also say that many years ago, a meteorite fell from the sky and directly created a crater here. The specific reasons are unknown. After all, this is just a poor town that no one cares about. How the basin was formed, who cares? After the universal call. This small town also experienced the baptism of riots. After being plundered by seniors, the place was devastated, leaving only a mess. This is what humans are. This day. A man with silver white hair passed by. He wore a clean white robe trimmed with delicate lace. Under the robe is a dark and soft lining, and under the feet are a pair of thick round-toed boots. The man walked on the road with a smile on his face, giving people the impression that he was like the wind blowing on the grassland, elusive, but hard to feel bad. "Excuse me, do you want to buy a rare item?" Just 300 points. When the white-haired man passed by, a woman with clothes stained with dried blood staggered over and sold rare items to the man. She lowered her voice because she only dared to do this when she saw the man dressed neatly. Otherwise, rare props can be exchanged for a lot of food at the veteran gathering place next door. Under normal circumstances, she would never dare to expose precious rare props. The white-haired man shook his head and walked a few steps faster. The woman bit her lower lip hard, moved closer, and said in a lower voice, "I'm very skilled, even 200 points. Please, I'm too hungry. Even, I can do it. Ouch, I really have a headache." The white-haired man smiled coquettishly and rubbed his hair. "I'm not one of your kind. And I'm sorry that your determination has been tarnished. I don't like women." The local woman who was selling rare grade props was startled when she heard this. She looked at the man's face, his flawless facial features, and his gentle smile. In a peaceful time, she would have been willing to cheat on him. However, such a perfect man actually doesn't like women. Hey, what a pity. SHHH. The white-haired man put his white index finger to his lips. He turned around and looked around. He saw many eager eyes peering into the dark place. He could only sigh helplessly and took out a package from his arms. Took out a loaf of dry bread from the parcel. "Eat." The woman hesitated for a moment, but still took the bread and started chewing it. After a while, he finished the bread. When she raised her head with unfinished thoughts, the wind-like man had already disappeared. After doing something trivial, the white-haired man came to a church. The door of the church was open, and the benches used for prayer inside were scattered and lying on the ground. In a corner of the church, close to the wall, there is a deliberately empty space. There were 7 or 8 corpses arranged neatly. There are various scars on each corpse. Some bodies were already cold, while others were still a little warm, as if they had just died. Their ages, time of death, and manner of death have nothing in common. But the only thing they have in common is that at this moment, they are all placed in an upright posture, with their backs facing the sky and their eyes closed. Their hands, with their fingers intertwined, were clasped together in front of their chests, seemingly in a praying posture. On the chest of each corpse, there is a small bright white flower quietly placed. This ordinary little white flower dilutes the sadness of death and adds a bit of solemnity and solemnity. A thin young man wearing a black priest's attire, with his back to the open door of the church, bowed his head in prayer. When the white-haired man stepped into the church, the young priest sighed softly and put on a ring. "Excuse me, are you here to pray, great sage?" The young priest turned around and stared, the round eyes on the bridge of his nose tilted to one side. 10 minutes later, the young priest moved two relatively clean stools and a table in front of the statue of the goddess with only half of her body left in the church and the upper body had long since collapsed, and sat down with the white-haired man. The young priest's expression was one of embarrassment, and he twisted slightly on his stool, seeming a little uncomfortable. "Lord Great Sage." After the awkward silence, the young priest plucked up the courage to raise his head and was about to break the silence, but the white-haired man smiled. His gentle smile was like a spring breeze. He magically pulled out a box of chess sets from his robe. "Shh, don't talk," the white-haired man smiled and winked, "let's play a game of chess." The young priest was stunned. But after a while, they still played chess. At first, the young priest was a little restrained. The white-haired man's attack was methodical, unhurried, and had the feeling of boiling a frog in warm water. But it happened to be this kind of chess style, and the game continued. The young priest was stunned when he saw the empty camp on his side, and the trembling queen surrounded by a group of soldiers and horses. "Come again." The white-haired man smiled slightly, looking very happy, and played another game. Second game. The young priest lost his temper, and his chess moves gradually revealed his prowess and murderous intent. The white-haired man, however, still responded calmly, not killing those who should be killed, and leaving those who could be killed for a while, as if he was not in a hurry at all. A few minutes down, the young priest found that his delicate queen was surrounded again. No more. He felt that he had lost inexplicably. But convinced. As expected of the great sage. The young priest didn't want to play anymore. "Come again." The white-haired man seemed to be addicted to playing. He rolled up his sleeves and took the initiative to rearrange the chess pieces on the messy chessboard. "Sir Great Sage, what are you?" "Boy Xiaozheng, we haven't seen each other for 10 years, but we have become estranged from each other." "Is teacher?" The young priest, whose real name is Koshamin Kotomine and nicknamed Komesa. The familiar tone of the white-haired man made Kotomine bow his head. He quickly succumbed to the authority of the white-haired young man and obediently changed his name. But his face clearly looked a little happy. The two chatted casually. The third game begins. "Boy Xiaozheng, I haven't seen you in 10 years. You have grown up." The teacher still hasn't changed at all. "Yes," the white-haired man sighed, made a random move, then touched his face and said seriously, "In my long life, this handsome face has been my only worry." Justice Kotomine. He played chess silently and tried a different way of playing. The serpentine movements, the false and the truth and the false are difficult to distinguish. Well, Kotomine lost this round faster. Kotomine suddenly recalled the fear of being grabbed by the teacher and tortured to death thousands of times during the boring days on the moving mountain in the Wandering Sea 10 years ago. Kotomine was kicked off the fourth game. While he was doing it, he couldn't help but speak again. "Teacher, long time no see." "Yes, 10 years. The white-haired man played chess meekly and smiled. "You came today because. Let's play chess." "Oh, Xiaozheng, you don't know. In that lifeless place, no one wants to play chess with me. It's weird if someone is willing to accompany you." Kotomine complained secretly in his heart. No one wants to keep experiencing the feeling of losing again and again, losing again and again, and losing until the end is bloody. Do you know why you lost? The white-haired man asked with a smile. Because the teacher's skills are so good. Kotomine answered honestly. No, I'm not actually strong. As he said this, one of Kotomine's horses fell into the sand with its halberd broken, its legs were broken, and it sadly withdrew from the battlefield. Justice Kotomine. Most human beings only like to look at the now, but I like to look at the present, past and future. Teacher, normal people would not use their prophecy ability when playing chess. Kotomine raised his head and glanced at the white-haired man, feeling a little unable to hold himself tight. You don't understand, the white-haired man said with a smile. What is the past, what is the present, and what is the future? When you really understand, you will find that the past, present, and future are just made up of countless lines. A mystery formed by the intersection. You and I are both in the mystery. But teacher, you still won. Because I'm playing chess. Justice Kotomine. How have you been these past 10 years? The white-haired man did not continue to delve deeper into this topic. Playing chess is still fun. He asked Kotomine about his life over the years. After hearing this, Kotomine was silent for a long time. It wasn't until the chessboard was empty again that he answered, just average, sensei. Tisk, you are still blaming me. The white-haired man pouted. I don't dare, teacher. Kotomine Koji took a deep breath. I have dirty blood flowing in my body, and I inherited a despicable surname. Teacher can accept me as a disciple. Kotomine is really happy. After all, teacher, but what about the great sage? Do you know why, after 10 years of not seeing each other, you and I will meet again at this moment, here? The white-haired man asked. Disciple is very curious. Everything in the world has laws. As the saying goes, each of us is in a mystery without knowing it. 10 years ago, I expelled you from the Wandering Sea on the grounds of cheating in chess, was sent to the Holy Church to serve as a small priest in this barren land. Do you know the reason? Kotomine said helplessly, Teacher, you should know that it is precisely because of the blood in my body that I resist this place. No, the white-haired man said with a smile, everyone exists for a reason. Kotomine is fair, remember, you and I are both part of the mystery. Then. Kotomine lost another round when he was distracted. He silently laid out his chess pieces and prepared to start the next game. It has been 10 years since the teacher had such a long discussion with him. And he still doesn't understand. But this feeling made him miss it very much. When Kotomine was young, he was looked down upon because of his surname Kotomine. His teacher also told him the story hidden in the surname. Therefore, Kotomine is fair and wishes he could change his name. Then the teacher gave him a name. Kotomine is fair. He came here 10 years ago, with faith in his heart, and silently studied the miracles of the Holy Church. The teacher later wrote quietly and said that everything had a reason and he would understand it one day. However, 10 years have passed, Kotomine is still confused, and he does not understand why he was expelled from the Wandering Sea by his teacher in the first place. But he believed what the teacher said. Because, his teacher is a figure who has been wandering in the sea like a mystery for an unknown period of time, the great sage. Some people in the Wandering Sea once suspected that the great sage might have genes from ancient fantasy creatures in his body, which was why he could survive for so long. To put it simply, he is not human. That's why he can survive until now. Very few people in the world know the name of the great sage Wandering Sea. It just so happened that Kotomine Taro was one of the people who knew the great sage's name. That was what the teacher told Kotomine in secret in order to comfort Kotomine when he was still very young and was being tortured horribly on the chessboard and couldn't help but burst into tears. The great sage watched as Kotomine started to play the chess pieces silently. He gently pressed Kotomine's hand to stop his movements. He took out a pocket watch, took a look at it, and sighed with exaggerated movements, "Oh, there's no time to play another round." Kodomine looked at his teacher blankly. "Here, I'll give it to you." The great sage handed a handmade doll into the hands of Kodomine Justice. Kodomine took a look and saw that the doll was somewhat similar to him, wearing black priest clothes, a cross hanging around his neck, short brown hair, and old-fashioned round glasses on the bridge of his nose. The overall style of the doll is slightly cartoony and looks a bit silly and cute. "Teacher, what is this?" Kodomine was fair and confused. "We haven't seen each other for 10 years, come here?" "It's a gift," the great sage said with a smile, "actually, it should be a reward." "Do something for me, teacher." "I knew it." Kodomine bowed his head and murmured to himself, but carefully placed the doll close to his body and hid it. However, he did not refuse and asked, "Teacher, what is it?" "I'll tell you later." The great sage stood up, patted the non-existent dust on his clean white robe, and walked towards the door step by step. The gentle sunlight fell on the great sage, making him look like the incarnation of light. Kodomine stared blankly at the back, almost feeling the urge to worship in his heart. "By the way, another disciple of mine will come here later to help you complete something. She is a beautiful woman." "Okay, teacher." Kodomine bowed his head impartially, not asking any more questions and showing no interest. "The weather is really nice today." The great sage raised his head at a 45-degree angle and looked up at the sky. He spread his white fingers in front of him, and the sunlight filtered through the gaps between his fingers, casting a mottled look on his face. At this time, the great sage was silent for a while, turned his back to Kodomine Justice, and suddenly said, "Do you still remember my name?" "I remember, Sensei." Kodomine said impartially. "Call me once, I haven't heard anyone call my name for a long time." "Good teacher." "Merlin." Merlin walked out contentedly. "Kodomine is fair." Merlin suddenly sighed, faced the sun, turned his back to Kodomine, and called out his full name. "Goodbye." Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 729. The roar of hundreds of locomotives rolled in like thunder. The roar of the locomotive crossed the hills and arrived at this small town. UK. This is an old town, an abandoned town. She's here. Behind the red hair, thick fog emerged out of thin air. The governor of Bor quickly walked out of the thick fog. She closed her eyes and felt it. She stood on the hill, overlooking the devastated town below, and said with certainty, "She is here." "Why are you hiding in such a poor place?" The redhead knew this place. A barren country, a barren town, no oil or water to speak of. When he was the humanoid nuclear bomb hidden behind the scenes of the German Republic, he received a task, to kill a high-ranking official of this country in the most brutal way. In the end, the red-haired man's solution was, he just swaggered open the door of the high-ranking official, killed everyone in the house, old and young, and then nailed them to the wall with wooden stakes. As for the high official himself, the red hair carefully broke every bone in his body. Amid the feeble groans of the senior official, the red-haired man cracked the opponent's skull with his last punch. This country is too weak. Always bullied. It's strange. Once the magician's group of creatures are far away from their own territory, their magic power will be greatly reduced. How did she come here? Governor Ball frowned, and she felt something was wrong. The redhead entered the city first. A city can be considered big or small, or small. The soldiers he brought surrounded the entire city's traffic arteries as much as possible. Once a suspicious person appeared, they would receive the news as soon as possible. Hey, she can't run away. The red-haired man clenched his fists and stepped into the city. Governor Ball was able to track the magician here without saying a word, thanks to her tracking skill. The governor of Bor can leave a mark on the target of contact. This mark can last up to a full month. Within a month, Governor Boar was able to sense the opponent's rough position through his skills. Normally, Governor Boar rarely uses this tracking skill. Generally speaking, the target she wants to track is killed on the spot and kept for tracking. Is it unnecessary? But this time is different. According to reliable information, the magician has a legendary item hidden on his body. That was a treasure stolen from the clock tower. There are already magicians in the clock tower and the wandering sea, looking for Cecilia's whereabouts all over Europe. This shouldn't be false. At that time, in Hungfa City, the woman took the initiative to come to my door. He said he wanted to cooperate. As long as the red hair provides her with protection, she will voluntarily hand over the legendary item. According to her, the legendary item was the product of myth resurgence and did not come from the other world. In magician terms, the very existence of that treasure is an immeasurable mystery. Search. The Grand Governor of Boar gradually disappeared into the smoke. She walked into this dilapidated town. When they came, there was too much movement. The poor people in the town had already gone into hiding in advance. They are experienced. This wave of people coming here in such a mighty force will do no good and will not bring the gospel. So, empty streets, empty of people. The red-haired man was like a bull in heat, smashing the walls to pieces, searching for Cecilia's traces in the most brutal way. The image of Cecilia is incompatible with the native residents of the town and is easily recognized. At the same time, outside Uktown, Myrian, Griffin, Cerberus, Yilin, and Gu Tianqing are stationed here. Yilin seems to be in a good mood today. Miriam was clearly not hungry, but Yilin took the initiative to mention having a big meal. Myrian wanted to refuse, but Yilin had already started cooking skillfully, and the aroma wafted out, they were so fragrant. So Miriam sat quietly on the ground, waiting for her meal. Griffin and Cerberus looked at each other and communicated silently. After a brief silence, Yilin quickly burst out and brought recipes from foreign countries in front of several people. After he finished cooking, he said he was tired and lay down to sleep. Although Griffin found it strange, Yilin seemed to be in high spirits all the way. It was hard to imagine that he would feel tired. Maybe he's really tired. Cerberus said calmly. A few people quickly fell into the delicious food. Only Gu Tianqing was quietly rubbing the cards and silently pulling out 3 of them. Divination. This is Gu Tianqing's long-lost serious divination along the way. The ability of divination consumes a lot of money. If one is not good at it, he will suffer the backlash of luck. Gu Tianqing would not blindly take advantage of Jia until the critical moment. Gu Tianqing looked at the 3 cards drawn and fell into deep thought. Should we leave? Miriam was satisfied and secretly burped. This meal was so filling, it felt like I had eaten 2 meals in one go. Miriam, who was full of joy, looked calm as an ancient well. But the dull hair on his forehead was greatly curled, almost in a circle, similar to the character 0. Everyone turned around and saw that Yilin was still lying on the ground motionless, with his back to them, as if he was fast asleep. Like a statue. Suddenly, Griffin reacted. She suddenly jumped up from the ground, with the barbecue fork still stained with minced meat in her hand, and stabbed Yilin in the back without warning. Laugh. The barbecue fork passed through Yilin's body without any hindrance. On the same spot, Miriam and Cerberus looked slightly startled. Yilin was skewered thoroughly by the barbecue spit, suddenly shattered into dots of light, and disappeared in front of everyone in the blink of an eye. Griffin gritted his teeth and said, "When did he learn projection magic?" After a moment of shock and anger, Griffin suddenly pulled out a pistol from behind, with the muzzle loaded with Honkai bullets, and pointed it at the back of Cerberus' head. "What did you do?" Griffin asked Cerberus with murderous intent. Cerberus closed his eyes, made no defensive movements, and did not avoid Griffin's gun. He said calmly, "I don't know about this." Griffin gritted his teeth. We are already here. If we let him run away at this time. A terrible thought flashed through Griffin's mind. But right now. Boom. In the small town of UK. There was a familiar explosion. A mini mushroom cloud, carrying debris and rubble, rushed into the sky. The explosive wind scattered in all directions, ruffling the hair of several people. Griffin stared blankly at the movement coming from the town of UK. Cerberus sighed, he's inside. Griffin's expression first flashed with confusion and surprise, but then he beamed with joy. Let's go in quickly. Without waiting for Griffin to remind her, Miriam moved the fastest, with a flash of light, and a close-fitting silver skirt and armor covered her body. She took the lead, and the heavy armor shook the earth's crust. After a few seconds, Miriam had rushed into the town of UK. I should go in, right? Gu Tianqing looked at Cerberus and Griffin with a smile. Griffin's tone was more respectful, and he bowed rarely. Mr. Gu, we need you. Gu Tianqing's eyes flashed past the firearm loaded with Hokai bombs in Griffin's hand, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Griffin keenly noticed Gu Tianqing's eyes and quickly stuffed the gun back behind his butt. This is fate. Gu Tianqing chuckled and stepped into the small town of UK. About 20 minutes ago. In UK town. This is a dilapidated house. I don't know what happened, but a corner of the roof collapsed, and beams of sunlight poured in from the collapsed holes, providing the only light in the house. Inside the house, there is a door and a window. But the only window was nailed together with old wooden strips. The door, the only entrance, was also fastened with more than a dozen locks from the back. In a small shabby room of about 30 square meters, a dozen people in ragged clothes were crowded. Among them, there were children, old people, women, and men. They buried their heads deeply in their knees and squatted back to provide each other with a slight sense of security. Among them, there is a figure who is incompatible with the others. Cecilia von Einsborn hid her face in her cloak. She used a simple suggestion magic to successfully become one of the refugees and hid here. Suggestion magic is more likely to be successful for the more mentally unstable the target. Cecilia successfully hinted to everyone in the room without spending much magic power. She lowered her head. Avoiding the eyes of the refugees, he secretly pulled up a corner of his cloak. Her hands were covered with dense magic engravings. The magic engravings on the hands are very different. On the right arm, engraved is inherent time control. This is a magic that is extremely taxing on the body, and consumes several times more magic power than ordinary magic. Generally speaking, Cecilia will not use it easily. It was precisely because she possessed the inherent time control ancestral magic that she was able to escape from Munich. This is a terrible magic that can change the time flow of the body. But on the left arm, there are circles of strange lines that have no sense of symmetry. In the center of the layers of engravings, on the inside of the forearm, there are 7 unique square engravings. The magic circuit and the crystal pattern circuit also have subtle differences in their basic core concepts. The core of crystal pattern is circle, which represents circulation. The core of magic is square, which represents the rules. Of course, most magic engravings are not square, but most of them are irregular patterns with curved corners. The core idea is the core idea. Modern magicians have already derived many completely different disciplines based on magic. There are 7 different abstract patterns within the 7 square engravings. The patterns are simple lines drawn with few strokes, but the artistic conception is in place, and the expressed things are outlined through the lines. The 7 abstract patterns are sword, lance, bow, horse, staff, skeleton, ox head. It looks like a collection of settings for some kind of war chess game. But this is a magic seal. Among them, the corresponding 4 patterns of bow, horse, skeleton, and ox head lit up one after another after Cecilia entered UK town. The rest of the remaining patterns are still dim. Suddenly, The pattern represented by the staff also lit up. There are still 2 seats suitable for the class. In the darkness, Cecilia was like a lone wolf hiding in a corner licking her wounds. She lowered her head, curled her limbs together, trembled slightly, and murmured to herself, "I'm curious about what seat is. And right now." Shortly after, the staff on Cecilia's forearm lit up. A calm voice sounded out of thin air above Cecilia's head. Cecilia was shocked. As soon as she raised her head, the scenery in front of her suddenly changed drastically. The dark sky, the barren land, and the rolling clouds. Cecilia's eyes flashed, and when she came to her senses again, she had appeared in a strange space with only black and white. Not far away, a smiling man was sitting cross-legged in the air, moving comfortably. A little girl wearing a Victorian-style lady's dress, but boldly made of hollow black silk material, floated obediently behind the man, squeezing his shoulders and back. This weird scene made Cecilia subconsciously open her pink lips in an instant, and an uncivilized word floated through her heart. But after a moment, Cecilia reacted, looked around, and said in surprise, "It's an inherent barrier. How is it possible?" Yilin said calmly, "Reality marble is a magic that embodies the mental landscape of the magician. To a certain extent, in the eyes of the magician, this is indeed a real marble. But to the apostles, this was nothing too impressive. Oops, no, it seems that in the apostle circle, this kind of ability is quite rare, not many people have it." Yilin said, tentatively agreeing with the other party's exclamation. He did not continue chatting on this topic and asked straight to the point, "Time is urgent, I only want to ask you one thing. For the sake of your life and safety, I hope you answer truthfully." Click. 2 charged bullets were loaded at the same time. As Yilin's spiritual energy value rapidly elapsed, layers of energy accumulated in the magazine. "Believe me, these 2 bullets will definitely hit you in the face." Yilin raised his head, his eyes were terrifyingly calm. In fact, from beginning to end, there was no treasure at all. It was stolen from the clock tower. "Let's go, right?" Cecilia's expression was even more shocked as she looked at this black magician from a foreign land. Unexpectedly, as soon as he opened his mouth, he told the truth. But after a moment, the shock on Cecilia's face dissipated. She breathed a long sigh of relief and nodded, "Yes." "So, this was a scam from the beginning? There is no treasure at all that can take out the prototype noble phantasm in my body and return it to Miriam." Yilin frowned slightly, "But why, B.A. Sermolo created such a situation? I am very curious, what is it for? You have deliberately led us to this place from the beginning. May I ask, is there anything special here?" Cecilia shook her head. "Actually, there are." After she finished speaking, her rose-red eyes stared at Yilin, and she asked curiously, "Before I answer your question, I really want to know how you do it." "Found mine. Just one trick, give food and ask for directions. This is just a small place. I deliver food all over the street, and when I deliver the 10th person, I ask. After all, a suspicious person must not cause any trouble in the town. It's really hard to attract the attention of refugees. Besides, your suggestion magic is not outrageous enough to cover the whole city." In the desolate space of evil thoughts, Yilin walked on circles of dark ripples at his feet and came to Cecilia. "So, answer me. What is the purpose of you, Barth Marrow, and the clock tower? You are really not a qualified magician." Cecilia sighed and looked at Yilin with calm eyes. "As long as you are a magician, you should know the answer." "Dear Black Magician, Mr. Yilin." So. The next second, Yilin was stunned. Because. As she spoke, Cecilia shook off her cloak in front of Yilin without Yilin's permission. She was naked under the cloak, and it turned out that Cecilia was not wearing anything. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 730. But in fact, What really made Yilin's mood fluctuate was not seeing Cecilia's naked body. If it's really an ordinary white body, just look at it, it's not a big deal. The point is, the body itself. The naked Cecilia exposed her most real side to Yilin. Her whole body was filled with magic markings. All kinds of magic engravings, densely packed and layered. Yilin could only see part of it clearly. There was a bullet hole in Cecilia's abdomen. There are clearly visible cracks around the bullet holes. Those were the traces left by Griffin's Hokai bomb. But a normal human body should not have cracks. What do you? Yilin asked. Yilin's question is what, not who. Because, he saw that Cecilia's existence itself was not human. More like, a product. Her body is like a manufactured product. This makes sense. It stands to reason that the human body cannot accommodate many types of magic engravings. The problem is not the magic mark itself, but the magic circuit. For orthodox magicians, a magic circuit is equivalent to an organ forcibly imposed on the human body. If there are too many messy organs, problems will naturally arise. In the most serious case, it is likely to cause the magic power to go wild and explode on the spot. But what if Cecilia isn't human? Then everything can be explained. Someone, for a certain purpose, created Celia von Einsborn. There are various magic circuits in her body and various magic markings on her body. My existence is the mystery itself. Cecilia generously displayed her body in front of Yilin and said with a smile. Part of the magic mark on her back suddenly lit up. After saying that, Cecilia fell straight back. Boom. Boom. Yilin's eyes narrowed and his face changed slightly. At that moment, 2 bullets were fired at the same time. The moment after shooting, Yilin activated telekinesis at the same time and strangled Cecilia from both sides. Kaka. In an instant, Cecilia's neck and limbs were forcefully twisted into strange angles by Yilin's invisible telekinesis. However, Cecilia, who fell backwards, still managed to turn her position under such circumstances. The bullets originally aimed at Cecilia's vital parts hit her shoulder and abdomen. Where it was shot, it exploded instantly. But the power of the explosion was much worse than Yilin expected. Apparently, there was something in Cecilia's body that absorbed part of the impact of the bullets, causing Yilin's 2 bullets to lose their power. Goodbye. After Cecilia was shot, she finally collapsed. The moment she fell, a gap suddenly opened behind her, and she disappeared into Yilin's subspace. Yilin stepped forward and looked at the place where Cecilia disappeared in surprise. There was only a long white hair left there. Her displacement magic actually ignored the subspace barrier. Well, this is no longer the category of magic. As Yilin spoke, he waved his hand and walked out of the space of evil thoughts, reappearing in the refugee room with a corner of the roof broken. As expected, Cecilia, who was supposed to be in the refugee house, had long since disappeared from the same place. In front of Yilin, the same trick was repeated again and again, another white hair. This actually made Yilin feel a little angry and a little depressed. With his current strength and mental level, he shouldn't be defeated by the same move. But there was no way, the other party's magic skills were beyond Yilin's understanding. It's not without reason that Cecilia can succeed repeatedly with the same displacement magic. Her displacement magic is close to the level of the famous wandering entertainer Darius Ainsworth at that time, reaching the realm of pseudo-magic. Because Yilin did not give a hint to the refugees in the house, when Yilin reappeared, a dozen refugees in ragged clothes huddled together in the house, looking at the well-dressed refugees with extremely frightened eyes. Yilin. It's like looking at someone from another world. Yilin lowered his head, quickly left a little bit of food on the ground, then turned into a shadow and left the place. A few seconds later, Yilin recovered from the shadow state, took off, and reached high altitude. From the time Cecilia left the subspace to the time Yilin came out, It was less than 10 seconds. In the deserted town, Cecilia took the initiative to expose herself to the red hair, causing chaos everywhere. The red hair moved quickly on the roof like a roaring bull. Wherever he passed, buildings collapsed, one house at a time, and he was unparalleled in his dominance. Call out. In the town of UK, there is a dilapidated church. As the red-haired man chased Cecilia, who was constantly changing positions, from the direction of the church, a high-speed moving shadow made a huge noise in mid-air, leaving behind a lightning-shaped line of light and shadow that spanned hundreds of meters in the blink of an eye distance, and hit the red hair directly. Fool! But just when the high-speed moving figure was about to hit the red hair, a piece of fog suddenly appeared between the red hair and the lightning. The figure, which was originally moving in a straight line at high speed, curved strangely in a huge arc when it broke into the fog, and crashed into the ruins on the side. The governor of Baal came out of the fog. She was smoking a cigarette and said to the red-haired woman in a cold voice, "I will block her while you go and catch that woman." The redhead is a typical melee fighter, with extremely high strength and dexterity. Although Cecilia kept changing positions, red hair always found a way to lock Cecilia's position. Various points in the city collapsed rapidly, and wherever red hair passed, there were countless casualties. This is just pure physical power, a transcendent apostle, transformed into a human armored vehicle, rampaging through the city. In a very short time, Yulin had a clear view of the situation in UK town. At the same time, there is a lake in UK city. This lake is not big, that is, it is large enough for boating and playing in it. It's not that deep, that is, it can drown people, but never see the body floating up. Once upon a time, this lake was also a tourist attraction in UK town. Although, not many people remember the name of this lake. But the only thing worthy of praise is that it is said that relevant geologists have made measurements and said that this lake is the lowest point in the entire basin. It is said that they also provided data. And when several extraordinary apostles were wreaking havoc and killing in UK town. In the center of the lake, layers of ink like black began to float. The black color was just a little bit at first. In the middle of the huge lake, it spread with the waves, making it difficult to attract attention. But soon, the color of the lake water became darker and darker. In the center, gradually, there were bubbles gurgling out. The area of bubbles grew larger and larger, and soon spread across the entire lake surface. Small white dots float on the lake. If anyone takes a closer look, they will be surprised to find that those little white dots are turned out to be fish maws. Boiling lake water, a lake of fish carcasses, and a blackened lake. It looks like a pot of fish soup stewed with ink is being cooked. The nameless lake experienced blackening and boiling successively, and then, a small whirlpool appeared. Yulin was thinking. Waves of heart palpitations came. The strong sense of crisis comes from behind. Yulin didn't hesitate and moved in a snake-like position to avoid it in the air. Invisible fluctuations passed through the position where Yulin was floating just now. There was obviously nothing, but Yulin still clearly felt something swishing past her feet. Click. Just after Yulin dodged 10 meters away, a 3-story small flat building suddenly underwent strange changes. It was as if there was an invisible hand that forcibly broke the building apart. With a click, the building was bent in the middle and was broken into a standard right angle. According to normal physical principles, if a building is broken by an external force, it will either collapse or, at worst, crack. But that building was forced into a right angle shape, which was extremely weird. It's unscientific. Actually, it's magic. Domination magic. The shape of that building has changed. Being able to do this should fall into the category of control magic. It is not possible for ordinary magicians to be able to change the shape of a building of this quality to such an exaggerated degree. Yulin never expected that in this situation, he would still have the heart to complain. His eyes narrowed and he turned to look in the direction of the attacker. Soon, Yilin found it. In that direction, is the church. At the top of the church, on the cross, a black figure stood quietly. Yilin silently raised the telescope and looked towards the church. Is a priest. A priest wearing glasses. He wore a luminous gemstone ring on his hand, and his index fingers and thumbs were combined into a square gesture in front of his glasses. It seems that this gesture is used to lock Yilin and achieve the effect of aiming. But what surprised Yilin the most was not the other person's gestures or clothes, but those eyes. Behind the old-fashioned round glasses, there is a pair of golden eyes. The pair of golden eyes flickered, like two golden LED light bulbs, which were extremely dazzling. It's the magic eye, the real magic eye. The magic eye is the ultimate amplifier for magicians. Naturally born magic eyes are extremely rare. Using modern scientific theory to explain them, they are basically equivalent to genetic mutation. It is impossible for a normal person to grow a pair of LED bulb eyes. People with magic eyes are almost born magicians. In the circle of magicians, various families will take the initiative to provide wives and adopt them as adopted sons, and they will be provided with food, housing, and living expenses. In other words, in the eyes of a magician, she is a piece of cake that tastes better than his wife. In the eyes of demons, there are naturally 3, 6, and 9 levels. Generally, low-level magic eyes are only red or green. But this kind of magic eye is also very precious in the era of mysterious decline in the past 2 decades. And further up, it's gold. On a higher level, it is said that there are rainbow colors that are impossible for serious humans to appear. According to descriptions in magicians' classics, the rainbow-colored magic eye is the grace of the gods, a glance obtained with a lifetime, other people's money and others' life, etc. The golden magic eye, to use the apostle's professional terminology, should be, this is an epic eye, and he has two. What kind of monsters are they? Yilin had a severe headache. Although he could still cope with it, the magician's endless methods made Yilin feel that he might as well deal with 2, no, 3 redheads, which would be easier for Yilin. He likes to kill melee types the most, it's easy and enjoyable. Those eyes, I really want to pick them out and take them back for study. As a black professional magician in the clock tower, Yilin had a strange thought in his mind. But the word Cecilia deliberately left flashed through his mind. Why do you say it was intentional? Because with Cecilia's method, she can obviously run away directly. But she happened to chat with Yilin for a few words. You are really not a qualified magician. This sentence should have some profound meaning. It shouldn't just be a taunt. UK Town, under the control of the Dark Hands, has become an extraordinary arena. Yilin didn't give the opponent a chance to fire again, and her brain was working rapidly, thinking of countermeasures. After thinking for a short time, Yilin raised his hand and pointed it towards a kilometer away, clasping his 5 fingers. The upgraded Grasp of Annihilation has such a large range that even Yilin himself feels cruel. The ordinary version of Grasp of Annihilation is unremarkable. Yilin does not need to practice. The pure skill effect is just put out. In Yilin's eyes, the flowing lines, quickly sketched, directly wrap the entire church in it. Boom! Another building that looks historic. It collapsed in the flames of the explosion. Several extraordinary apostles caused chaos in the city. One after another, low buildings collapsed, and the red-haired man transformed into the captain of the demolition team, pushing them all the way. His only shortcoming seems to be his inability to move in the air, but it doesn't matter. Walking on dry land feels the same, but the movement is a bit louder. Cecilia has laid out many replacement points in the city in advance. The key point of replacement magic is exchange. It cannot be created out of nothing, and it cannot be teleported at will like Yilin's teleportation technique. However, the magic power in her body is terrifyingly powerful. The simple replacement magic was turned into a pseudo-magic technique for her, making the red hair visible but intangible, and she was filled with evil fire. In the air, the high-speed moving figure was getting faster and faster. Behind his butt, as he moved, a sonic boom sound was heard. Wherever they passed, glass shattered in a straight line, and houses collapsed one after another in the sonic boom, raising high clouds of dust. His speed actually reached the speed of sound. Yulin took a breath and did not dare to be careless in this Superman's arena. After he blew up the church with grasp of annihilation, the young priest, covered in smoke, staggered not far from the center of the explosion. Judging from his footsteps, it seemed that he had suffered a lot of trauma in the explosion just now. The priest stared at Yulin for no reason. Even though he was injured, he endured the severe pain and activated his magic again, aiming at Yulin in the air. Multiple projections. Before understanding the secret of the other party's magic, Yulin did not dare to approach rashly for safety reasons. He fired a shot into the air, and bright spots of light exploded in the sky, turning into a shower of light that fell everywhere and turned into Yulin's projection. These projections appear lifelike and realistic on the surface. The priest who was taking aim was slightly startled, and his rhythm was disrupted by Yulin's sudden display of extremely high magic attainments. The next shot of control magic that could change shape did not go out as expected. Across the ruins, Yulin glanced at the priest, and her heart moved. Instead of staying here, she turned around and ran quickly, chasing the movements of the red-haired and Cecilia before catching up with Cecilia. Rather than this messy situation or the box, Yulin was more concerned about Cecilia's purpose. Cecilia changed all the way and finally came to the lake in UK Town. Yulin was the last to arrive. After all, he was flying, and he couldn't be compared to the short-legged redhead. While the red-haired man was still moaning about demolition in the city, Yulin had already arrived above the lake and confronted the naked Cecilia from the air. Cecilia raised her head and smiled. "You are here. Is this your purpose?" Yulin frowned. The water in the lake had long been dyed pure black. Only a fool would not be able to tell that there was something wrong with this wrong color. The fish in the lake were completely dead, with their bellies swollen, and the sparkling waves floating in the black water were truly spectacular. And in the middle of the lake, a small whirlpool quietly appeared. "For magicians," Cecilia said with a smile, "lake, mirror, plane, these special scenes always have extraordinary significance. Just like the magic show on the stage, they always rely on these seemingly ordinary scenes. Props to accomplish the amazing impossible." "Right. Lake. Mirror." Yulin couldn't help but think of the lake in Kanzaki City and the mirror in Styx Junior High School. Suddenly, just when Yulin hesitated for a moment in the air, Cecilia left an incomprehensible word and then jumped into the lake. "Not good." Yulin's face changed drastically. In mid-air, he quickly opened the communication panel, clicked on Gu Tianqing's name, and shouted into the call box, "You guys, don't step into the city." Gu Tianqing actually replied in seconds, "It's too late. The proud king of knights has already charged in with his sword. She's normal. I'm mainly talking about you." "Me? Haha." Guess Gu Tianqing smiled. An ominous premonition came to Yulin's mind. "You actually came in. Remember what I said?" This sound actually came from the lake. At some point, Gu Tianqing came to the lake, sat down, smiled, waved and said hello to Yulin in the sky. Yulin looked at Gu Tianqing in surprise. He originally thought that Gu Tianqing would be more cooperative this time and would just listen to him and stay outside the town. In the dark lake, after Cecilia threw herself into the lake, the small whirlpool suddenly surged, the turbulence was rapid, and it turned into a huge whirlpool in the blink of an eye. In the center of the whirlpool was a deep cave, bottomless, and the entire black water of the lake, as well as the white fish carcasses, were swallowed up by the cave at a terrifying speed. It was fate that brought us here. Gu Tianqing said the same thing once in Hating City, but this time it gave Yilin a different feeling. Crash dash. Right now. 7 dark chains shot out from the center of the vortex. One of the chains passed through Yilin's chest with lightning speed. The same style of chain also passed through Gu Tianqing's chest. Gu Tianqing's chest was instantly stained red with blood, but his smile did not diminish. He raised a finger towards Yilin and asked, "Now, do you still believe in fate? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 731. Severe pain came from his chest. Yilin lowered his head and looked at the chain passing through his heart. Normally, he would die suddenly from massive bleeding the moment the chain was pulled out. Yilin silently raised her middle finger to Gu Tianqing. He put on the hanging ring, and with a round wave of his hand, a circle filled with sparks appeared in front of Yilin. At the same time, inside the city, Myrian was like a small tank with full power, riding a unicorn and racing down the street. Suddenly, Myrian's pupils shrank, her hair trembled, and the invisible longsword was held in front of her. Clang! The sound of long metal collision resounded in the ears. Miriam was knocked off the horse by the chain, her delicate body flew upside down, her armor was stained with blood, and she was nailed to the wall. Myrian opened her mouth and spit out a large mouthful of blood. She looked at the chain that penetrated the silver armor in shock. She had clearly blocked it just now, but why? Severe pain spread throughout the body. All the nerves in the body seemed to be crying. If Yilin were here, she would definitely sigh. Even Myrian couldn't escape. He was strung up in chains and there was nothing to be ashamed of. Give up, hurry up, do what you have to do. At the same time, everywhere in the city, a figure moving at high speed. The great governor of Bor, hidden in the mist. A wave of seriously injured priests were bombed. With a ferocious look on his face, he was ready to tear Cecilia's red hair with his hands. Without exception, they all had the same chains pierced through their chests from different angles. The only thing that remains the same is that no one can escape the poke. Some had no time to resist, and some resisted in vain. The above 7 people, including Yilin, were all strung together. 7 people located in various places in UK town. After being penetrated by chains, an irresistible pulling force came, pulling them towards the same place. Even the iron-blooded red-haired man couldn't help but groan at this moment, with a look of pain on his face. If ordinary people can't understand what it feels like to have a chain penetrate the heart and be pulled hard, it can actually be compared to being pulled by a rope. There is a horse dragging the rope in front of it and running away. It is probably similar to this kind of pain. Yilin gritted her teeth, endured the severe pain in her chest, and stepped into the portal. Next moment, he appeared in front of Cerberus and Griffin, who looked shocked. They also entered the town of UK. They were watching everything happening in the town. The chain was not cut off as the portal behind Yilin closed. In the empty void above his head, a faint ripple appeared, and the chain stretched out strangely from the ripples, still stubbornly connected to Yilin. Really? Yilin had no expression on her face, dragging the heavy chain, step by step, before arriving in front of Cerberus. I will return. Yilin took off Cerberus's blindfold, and he suddenly approached Cerberus' pale face. The distance between the two was only a few centimeters. Cerberus could even clearly feel the warmth coming from Yilin's breath and the coldness in his mouth. Yilin looked at the green artificial magic eye. He was obviously staring at that eye, but Yilin's eyes seemed to have stolen the eyeball and made eye contact with someone in the dark. After Yilin finished speaking, in Cerberus's shocked eyes, he suddenly stretched out 2 fingers and inserted them into Cerberus's eyes. Laugh. Bright red blood spurted out, and Yilin used 2 fingers to pull the artificial magic eye out of Cerberus's eye socket. Yilin put the artificial magic eye into the storage space. Originally, Yilin wanted to be domineering and just crush her. But if you think about it carefully, it seems a bit of a waste to destroy this advanced magic and alchemy technology product. The artificial magic eye of Cerberus was taken out alive by Yilin. She fell to the ground weakly, covering her bleeding and empty eye sockets, and remained silent. After a while, Cerberus lowered his head, with one eye full of tears and one eye bleeding, and cried, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Yilin took a deep breath. His face gradually turned pale due to the continued blood loss and pain. If I'm not mistaken, the Honkai magic behind Griffin can only be activated with the help of this magic eye. Once the connection between this evil eye and the world is disconnected, Bartholomew will no longer be able to activate body collapse against Griffin. On the side, Griffin was stunned by Yilin's sudden behavior. She had no idea what was going on. Yilin's words, Cerberus' reaction, and the order she received were somewhat different. "The Honkai magic behind me," Griffin muttered to himself. "Wait a moment." While in shock, Griffin suddenly felt that something was wrong. "The magic mark on her back is a private place. When did he secretly see it?" Cerberus cried silently. Yilin pointed at the 2 of them, "Your lives are mine." The next second, Yilin was suddenly dragged into the air by the chains. At the same moment, 7 people chained by black chains were simultaneously pulled into the center of the turbulent whirlpool in the lake. To the abyss. Fall. The process of human exploration of the unknown is always surprisingly similar. Derive theories beyond the current level from known and observable phenomena. Then use countless data and experiments to confirm it. Just like many years ago, there was a great man who was hit on the brain by an apple, and suddenly he came up with the idea of universal gravity. In ancient times, some people saw the sunrise and sunset and speculated that the world might be flat, covered by a pot lid. Later, some people speculated that the earth is round through various phenomena. Human beings always have no doubt about the truth they see with their own eyes. But what about the facts? From ancient times to the present, human beings have accidentally discovered that there is an unknown side hidden in the seemingly normal world. Hidden on the other side of the world are all kinds of mysteries. Different countries or regions have different explanations for these mysterious phenomena and have produced many versions. Maze / Fantasy / Abnormal / Inside. Copy / Shinayan / Grey fog / Dark side. With the rise of science and the concealment of mystery, these phenomena gradually disappeared from human sight. In the circle of magicians, there are unique insights into this weird phenomenon. Singularity. Yilin had seen a similar theory in one of the magician's miscellaneous stories. In the magician's theory, the singularity refers to a part that once existed or did not exist at all in the current human history. It was extracted from the long timeline by some force and formed a nearly airtight the container. This special container that accommodates a period of time, some people, and a period of history is called a singularity. When Yilin first read this paragraph, I find it very interesting. From the Apostle's perspective, isn't the singularity the magician calls similar to the Apostle's world of trials? At that time, Yilin even had a ridiculous idea. Could it be that before the arrival of the 4 towers, existences similar to Apostles already existed, and that they repeatedly traveled through various trials, ultimately leaving behind various vague legends in history? Or is it that the changes that have taken place in the world in the past 10 years have also happened before in human history? This was Yilin's conjecture when she read the magician's classics. But there is no evidence. Yilin also cannot be confirmed in any way. But now, the evidence is coming. Including Yilin, there were 7 people in total. They were dragged into the abyss by the 7 ruthless iron ropes. They spin, float, and sink in the whirlpool. In it, it was difficult for them to even make simple eye contact. Waves of dizziness, like seasickness, made them lose the ability to speak. They fell deeper and deeper, dragged by the chains for an unknown length of time. It seemed like there was no end until everything was pitch black and no light could be seen anymore. Until, at the end of the chain, a door appeared. A dark door. That's the door. The expressions of several people who were chained and drifting with the crowd changed at the same time when they saw the door that was familiar but had an unfamiliar style. Including Yulin. It dawned on him. A sudden realization. The heavy door slowly opened as several people arrived. The ancient and decaying atmosphere poured out as the door opened. It smells a bit like moldy food. Before they could appreciate it carefully, they were sucked in by the slightly opened door like a shell. But Yulin's eyes began to turn red, and a buzzing noise sounded in her ears. But in fact, the sound did not come from his ears, but from his brain. It's like bursts of noise, echoing deep in the brain, lasting and continuous. Warn. 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 When Yulin entered the door, her eyes were dark and empty. The scarlet light converged into lines of dazzling fonts. Unknown error found. Correcting. Correction failed. Apostle 1010 was detected and entered the other world through illegal means. Correction failed. Damn. Oh, I see. Yulin. This description from the tower has a strange style of painting. But it doesn't matter. In the darkness, lines of text appeared in front of Yulin's eyes, and Yulin was overwhelmed. Unconventional hyperlink in progress. Linking. 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 Don't panic. Please Apostle 1010, stay calm, be optimistic, and enjoy happiness with your heart. Link successful. Loading the heroic seed. Adapting to new rules. Please wait with patience. I will soon go to the heroic spirit seat as a heroic spirit. Wow. Yulin's eyes suddenly lit up. From pure black to pure white, it only took a blink of an eye for the scenery in front of Yulin to change. Yulin didn't even have time to notice whether she blinked or not before she came here. It is a little different from the previous loading, this time there is no waiting space. He came here through the door at the bottom of the lake in UK town. Knew it? Yulin had already had similar thoughts. The first time I had this idea was when I came out of the world of Auranos. At that time, Yulin learned that the world of Auranos, before its destruction, had the same position as Yulin's main world. So, here comes the problem. Will there be an existence similar to Trial in Yulin's main world? But this idea only bothered Yulin for a short time. Because there is no point in dwelling on a conjecture that cannot be verified at all. Until now, Yulin finally got the answer. It turns out it's possible. This is a trial. The trial itself is what magicians call singularity points, and each singularity constitutes our trial. And we apostles are a group of beings who travel through it and benefit from it. Now, are you having a headache, or are you laughing? 11 ER. Yulin called Xiao 11 from afar. Although Yulin knew that Xiao 11 would not reply because of such complaints. But Yulin believed that Xiao 11 should know. Under normal circumstances, when human eyes suddenly go from darkness to light, there will be a light adaptation process. But not now. Yulin didn't feel any discomfort at all. In the white space, in front, there is a chair. The chair is made of stone, with cracks on the high backrest and armrests on both sides, making it look a bit out of style. On the chair, there is a pattern of a stick, which seems to represent something. The seat of heroes. Combining the strange hints that surfaced just now and the words left by Cecilia von Einsborn, Yulin roughly understood where she was. You mean, let me sit on it? Yulin walked to the seat and knocked a few times. There was a dull touch on my fingertips. He suddenly thought of something. Can this seat be blown up? Yulin resisted the urge to attack. In an unknown situation, it was better not to mess around. It would be really uncomfortable if she couldn't go back. At this time, for some reason, the words Gu Tianqing said with a smile by the lake suddenly echoed in Yulin's mind. Yulin had no time to pay attention at that time. But now that I think about it, what Gu Tianqing said is actually a little different from what he said in Hating City. In Hating City, Gu Tianqing said, "It was fate that led me here." And by the lake in UK town, what he said was clearly, "It was fate that led us here." Call. Yulin sighed helplessly and sat on it. The moment Yulin's butt came into contact with the heroic soul seat, he felt as if there was a bang in his head, as if something had forced it away. A huge flow of information poured into Yulin's memory in the simplest and most crude way. Holy Grail War. The Universal Wishing Machine. Heroic Spirit. Followers. Rank. Noble Phantasm. All relevant knowledge entered Yulin's memory in 1 second, no, not even 1 second, and was understood and digested in a way that humans could not understand. It was like compressing infinite information into a moment, and this moment was gently put into Yulin's mind by some kind of power, and then, boom, exploded. In other words, when Yulin sat on the heroic soul seat, all the knowledge about the Holy Grail War was accepted by Yulin as if it had been read thousands of times. It's a bit complicated to say. But it's easy to understand if you give an example. What that knowledge changed was not Yulin's memory, but cognition. Just like a person, in cognition, human and dog cannot be together. You can use this simple and crude method to change your cognition, and it will be completely different. He will take it for granted that a wonderful love story between man and dog occurs, and even give his most sincere blessings. Wang I'm really sorry to use you as an example, but that's the truth. Interesting. After Yulin understood the relevant knowledge in a brief moment, the corners of her mouth raised and she began to become interested in the next Holy Grail War. At this time, the Holy Grail War with new rules was reconnected, and a familiar warm reminder appeared in front of Yulin's eyes. Welcome to the throne of heroes. So, you are dead. But actually you are not dead. You are now a heroic spirit who is assumed to have died and left behind various deeds. You are in the throne of heroes, in the dead space, waiting for a long time to form a team, wait for the book to be arranged. Finally, one day, something happened. After your long wait, the match is finally successful. You are very happy and excited, just like a child. Go, the hero who will leave behind various legends over a long period of time. Please don't live up to the name of a hero. At this time, above the heroic soul seat, a virtual scale appeared out of thin air. The gorgeous scale is inlaid with gold and diamonds, and little bits of light fall on Yulin's head. At that moment, Yulin felt that something was different about herself. Yulin's eyes flashed. When he came to his senses, he felt down to earth again. Yulin was currently in a magnificent palace. Along with Yulin, there were 6 other people. Including Yulin, the 6 people put on some strange costumes, and it looked like they were holding a large-scale cosplay show. Tisk, are you my servants? At this time, a lazy voice came from diagonally above them. A man wearing a sexy coat, exposing his chest, wearing a crown, and with smooth blonde hair, uses a lazy posture, bends one leg, and steps on the spacious throne. The whole person is lying in a comfortable reclining posture. Armrest edge. The style of the throne is very old-fashioned, but from the carvings and decorations on the side of the throne, it can be seen that the workmanship is extraordinary, at least it has taken a lot of thought. Answer my question, are you my servant? Seeing that Yulin and the others didn't answer, the man on the throne glanced sideways, arrogant, and his voice was a bit colder. The pair of golden pupils were filled with a brilliance that made people unable to breathe, while they stared at the 7 outsiders under the throne. After a while, the man on the throne sighed softly. He shook his head, closed his eyes in disappointment, and sighed softly with words that echoed throughout the palace. So weak. The stock market plummeted today, I lost a huge 10,000 yuan, and a month's worth of writing was in vain. I really wanted to go to the rooftop. But when I think of you, oh, please give me some strength please. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 732. So weak. So weak. So weak. So weak. 3 words echoed in the empty palace. I don't know if there is any special echo structure in this palace. The echo echoed for so long. It was so long that it was just a simple sentence, but to the ears of Yilin and others, it was like saying, so weak. Yilin's face darkened. Even he felt a little uncomfortable. Because the contempt in the eyes of the man sitting on the throne was undisguised and naked. Who is he? A question mark appeared in Yilin's mind. But the knowledge that heroic soul instilled in him allowed him to understand the most basic concept. Master and servant. The Holy Grail War is, ultimately, a magical ritual. An ancient magical ritual. In the concept of magic, anything that can use the word ritual is not an ordinary magic. First, it requires a lot of preparation, complicated prerequisites, and a lot of magic support to complete a magic ritual. The Holy Grail War, or the Holy Grail ceremony is the best among them. Yilin suddenly understood why there was no similar record in any of the books in the clock tower. Barthmero, or several of the monarchs, had been planning this magic ritual for a long time for a certain purpose. They even hid all the relevant information in advance to prevent Yilin from discovering it. The serious Holy Grail War is a large-scale magic ceremony composed of 7 masters and 7 servants. 7 masters, with the help of rituals, at a specific place, at a specific time, with the help of holy relics or other props, summon a soul body called a hero from the past or future timeline and return to reality. 7 groups of people fight, and the group that survives in the end is qualified to possess the Holy Grail and make a wish that will be fulfilled. When Yilin had this part of knowledge, she felt that this Holy Grail must be a cheating thing. Anything related to making a wish is not a good thing. Having said that, in Kanzaki City, the thing that twisted Gyajiamimi's body seemed to have a vague meaning of the Holy Grail. It seems that no matter which space or world we are in, there are always people who work tirelessly to get something for nothing and get this universal wishing machine. Boring. Yilin made a simple evaluation in her mind. Let's talk about the current situation. Yilin noticed that the way they were currently summoned seemed a little different from the serious Holy Grail War. They are indeed 7 servants, but the only one who summoned them to this world seems to be the very attractive-looking blonde man on the throne. Just, one person? After a short analysis, Yilin noticed the terrifying aspect. Click. In silence. The red-haired man with a bad temper and a strange Chinese character tattoo on his back couldn't stand it anymore. The sound of gnashing teeth rang out. What kind of dog are you dash? When the red hair said the first word, Yilin began to lower his head and mourned for the red hair. The bastards of heroic spirits with weak light are looking for death. The man who looked like he was covered in golden light had a contemptuous look in his eyes. In an instant, something called aura swept through the entire palace. The torch in the palace is shaking wildly. The magnificent pillars began to tremble. For a moment, Yilin felt as if a huge mountain was pressing down on her shoulders. Her knees were bent a bit unsatisfactorily, and she almost knelt on the ground. Chi. Behind the throne, circles of space ripples suddenly appeared. Golden chains, with the sound of metal clanking, pierced out from the ripples. The style of those chains was almost the same as the black chains that dragged Yilin and others into the lake. The only difference was the color. The gold color is obviously a lot more stylish. The ends of the chains were in a sharp shape, and the red hare was just about to get angry when the chains pierced the red hare's hands and feet without any warning, making him unable to move. "You humble reptile, do I allow you to make sounds that will defile my ears?" Click click click. The chains tied the red hare into a strange shape. The continuously tightened chains were deeply embedded in the red hare's muscles. Drops of bright red blood dripped along the gaps in the chains and fell to the ground. When the others heard this, they quickly lowered their heads and expressed sympathy for the red hare's experience. The apostles are a group of cunning creatures who take advantage of the situation. The moment the red hare suffered, they already understood that this man actually had the power to completely overwhelm them. Even Miriam frowned and didn't say much. "Kneel down." The man on the throne sneered, waved his hand, and his red hair was pulled by the chain to the sky above the palace, and his whole body was pulled into a big shape. Among the 7 people, there was a woman with long brown hair and freckles on her face. She knelt down on one knee with a silent expression. She is the strange woman who moves at the speed of sound in UK Town. Only then did Yilin realize that it was a woman. Yilin thought she was a boy before. This is a big misunderstanding. The others looked at each other, motionless. "Kneel down, it's so embarrassing. But if I don't kneel down, I feel like I will die." "Oh, a weak heroic spirit from the future." The blonde man glanced at several people one by one. He first looked at Miriam. "You have inherited the title of king. You can accept the mercy of this king without having to kneel." Miriam was stunned. Then, the blonde man looked at Koto Mine Justice again. He closed his eyes and was silent for a moment, and then said, "It's boring, forget it, you don't have to kneel down." Thank you, thank you." Kotoman's expression looked a little confused, but he still hesitated and said thank you. He doesn't seem to be a bad person. Koto Mine thought to himself. "Dear king." On the side, Gu Tianqing knelt down on one knee without waiting for the blonde man to look at her, with the same fake smile on her face. The golden-haired man's gaze passed over the face of Governor Bal. Just ignored it? Governor Bal stared, but she did not dare to speak. Finally, the golden-haired man's eyes fell on Yilin. He frowned slightly and stared at Yilin's face for a long time. Finally, an interesting smile appeared on his face that had been tense, as if the whole world owed him money, filled with deep hatred and contempt for the whole world. "Interesting. I look forward to your performance." After saying that, in the ripples behind the golden retriever, gorgeous weapons, like anti-aircraft guns, emerged. The end of the weapon was pointed directly at the only governor of Bor who had not been accosted. Everyone can see what this means. You are not eligible. Either kneel down or die. Call. Borda took a deep breath of smoke and knelt down. "See my king." Very good. The first meeting between the overjoyed master and servants finally ended successfully. The poor red hare, like meat ready to be skewered on a campfire, was still skewered in the air. Judging from his distorted facial features, he seemed to regret it. He even wondered if kneeling down now would count. But the golden retriever didn't say anything, and we didn't dare to mention it, so we could only remain in a stalemate. The redhead closed his eyes and simply pretended to be dead. Even though the bleeding was serious, in fact, with the red-haired person's constitution, he wouldn't die even if he stayed there for a day or two. His brain was not as good as Yilin's, and he was still combining the knowledge in his mind with the current situation. In fact, Yilin understood it quickly. A normal Holy Grail war involves one master and one servant. Why? It's very simple, because normally, the magic power of modern magicians, or modern magicians, can only allow them to maintain the consumption of one servant. Only 2 can hold up the sky, any more would be impossible. The magician himself would be sucked to death. But the golden hair sitting arrogantly on the throne in front of him actually summoned 7 servants from the throne of heroes by himself. Even though these 7 servants seemed weak in his eyes, they were still 7 in total. Quantity makes up for quality. From this point, it can be seen that the magic power of golden retrievers is ridiculously high. There is a strange scene in the palace now. Except for the red hair who was skewered, and Gu Tianqing and Boar who were kneeling on the ground, everyone else was standing still. This differential treatment is too obvious. Boar was filled with resentment, but he didn't dare to show up. Golden Retriever didn't speak, and she didn't dare to stand up. The Golden Retriever on the throne looked at the 7 people and sighed, "You are too weak." The Golden Retriever's eyes were very much like the disdain of a superior human being looking at the ants on the ground. Is there any need to stress over and over again? Yilin was silent. He complained secretly in his mind while also assessing the Golden Retriever's strength. Converted to the Apostle's measurement method, it is approximately equal to several Henry Zhang. Calculate for a while. Yilin gave up, he really couldn't estimate it. The red-haired man is one of the top 100 strongest men in the world, a superman among humans, but in the hands of the Golden Retriever, he seems so vulnerable and weak. After a while, Yilin opened her eyes, feeling dumb in her heart. Maybe, only the Apocalypse Knight who exists in memory can compete with the Golden Retriever. That's fine. The Golden Retriever looked sad, waved his hand, and 7 rays of light of different colors flew towards the 7 Yilins. Call out. There was a flash of light, and Yilin felt something seemed to bite her on the back of her hand. When he looked down, he saw a red mark on the back of his hand. The engraving is composed of 3 parts, and the 3 parts of the engraving in different shapes form a complete pattern. It looks like an unconventional tattoo. Don't tell me, it's pretty good looking. Just when the mark fell on Yilin's hand, Yilin felt her eyebrows swell, as if something had been stretched open, and the swelling felt uncomfortable. It's a command spell. Yilin ignored the changes in his body for the time being. He looked at the pattern on the back of his hand in surprise, frowning, feeling a little surprised. Based on the knowledge instilled by the heroic soul seed, Yilin recognized that it was something called a command spell. The master-servant relationship between a master and a servant relies on command spells. There are 3 command spells in total, and they have many functions. But the most fundamental function is for the master to restrain the followers. Every time a command spell is consumed, the master can force the followers to do something, even if the followers themselves are very resistant to it. Simply put, through command spells, the master can do whatever he wants to his followers. Another function is to greatly enhance the combat effectiveness of the servant. Within the rules of the Holy Grail War, how to use command spells appropriately is also a compulsory course for every master mage. In fact, according to the rules, most masters will only consume 2 command seals. Because once the 3 command spells are consumed, it is equivalent to the master having no way of restraining the servants. The followers will be able to completely let themselves go. But now, Jin Mao actually returned the command spell to Yilin and others. In other words, is he confident that he can eat them to death even without the restraint of the command spell? In an instant, Yilin understood Jin Mao's thoughts. The Golden Retriever seemed tired. Leaning on the throne alone, he raised his head and no longer looked at Yilin and the others. His eyes seemed unfocused, and he seemed to be staring aimlessly at a corner of the palace, which was empty. After a while, he waved his hand in boredom and told a few people to get lost. Except for the poor red-haired man who was still tied to the chain, the others did not dare to stay and left the palace quickly. The moment he stepped out of the palace, the fresh, thin air hits your face. What caught the eyes of the followers was a cloudless sky and a spectacular city with an ancient atmosphere everywhere. They are currently located on the top floor of a palace. The palace is entirely made of huge stones. There are many reliefs in retro style on the surface of the stones. The reliefs are filled with exaggerated figures of humans and animals. If you look carefully and follow the reliefs, it seems to be a picture scroll narrating a magnificent epic. And this kind of relief carvings are all over the surface of the palace. The palace is not very high, it is like a pyramid, with layers upon layers, about 20 stories high. The main hall where Golden Retriever is located has a straight staircase going all the way down. Each step is half a meter high. A normal person would have to work very hard to climb up one step. Why does this kind of building look like the style of prehistoric civilization? Yilin frowned and looked at the surrounding environment. The city is surrounded by high walls. The entire city's area can only be barely considered a small city from the perspective of Yilin and several modern people. While Yilin was surveying the environment, Governor Boar snorted coldly, turned into smoke, and disappeared. The few remaining people walked down the stone steps step by step, and finally reached the ground. Yilin didn't want to attract too much attention, so she left honestly. He always felt that there seemed to be something in the air, giving Yilin a strange sense of comfort. Yeah, comfort. If Yilin were a fish, it would be like he was back swimming in the sea. Assuming he was a bird, it was like returning to the sky. Here, Yilin has the illusion that she can take off on the spot at any time and feel as if she is floating. After walking to the ground, Kodomine glanced at Yilin and Gu Tianqing with vigilance. Hello, my name is Kodomine Justice. Before, I thought you were here, forget it. Anyway, now I think we should have a truce for now. After hesitating for a while, Kodomine looked at the faces of several people, and finally bypassed Yilin and Gu Tianqing, came to Miriam, and stretched out his right hand. Myrian Artoria X Pendragon. What? When Kodomine heard Miriam's name, he immediately let go of the hand he had held and took a few steps back. Pendragon, it turns out you are. Miriam's hair trembled, and a question mark slowly appeared in response to Kodomine's fair reaction. Oh. Yilin noticed Kodomine's fair reaction and felt something in her heart. Before Yilin could use his usual method to extract some information from the other party, Kodomine's face turned pale and he left in a hurry. As for the Sonic woman, her cold eyes swept across the faces of Yilin and the others, and she soon followed Kodomine Justice and left. I won't disturb you anymore. Gu Tianqing spread his hands, chuckled, and prepared to leave as if he was a good Samaritan and not a light bulb. You should think clearly about how to give me an explanation. Yilin squinted her eyes and looked at Gu Tianqing's back with a dangerous light in her eyes. Gu Tianqing paused, then turned his head, his smile not diminishing. Believe me, you will know soon. Haha, this is a fateful encounter. I think we should all enjoy this moment with our hearts and feel the weight of fate. Fragrance. Stinky stick. Yilin raised her middle finger towards Gu Tianqing as a greeting. Thanks for the compliment. Gu Tianqing left. Yilin and Miriam looked at each other in confusion. The two of them were quite familiar with each other, so there was nothing awkward about them, so they formed a temporary team and wandered around in a strange city. This is indeed a city of prehistoric civilization. In the city, there are many residents walking on the streets with smiling faces. Most of the buildings in the city are made of stones and are one-story bungalows, and some are even mud houses, which are very simple. In the civilization here, currency has not yet appeared. Yilin noticed that there was a market in the city, and people in the market exchanged food, coarse clothes, and copper weapons for various supplies. An ordinary Bronze Age? No. Yilin did think so at first. Perhaps in this city, except for Golden Retriever, everyone else is an ordinary resident. Until Yilin saw. A thin man passed by with the speed of a 100-meter sprint champion, easily carrying a stone weighing a ton. A poorly dressed woman muttered words and then created a fire out of thin air. A child plays happily on the roadside with a dozen clay pots floating above his head. A group of well-dressed palace priests wearing ancient magician robes floated past in neat formation from the air. From outside the city, several local natives used a primitive roller cart to pull the body of an unknown creature that was nearly 6 meters long. They howled with excitement and were ready to chop some meat and exchange it for supplies. Several noble palace priests commanded the soldiers to push the magic cannons engraved with magic patterns to the city wall. Then the soldiers easily carried the tons of magic cannons with one hand. These scenes opened the eyes of Yulin and Miriam. This style of painting is wrong. The city is not big. In shock, Yulin walked around half a circle. Next to the palace, Yulin learned the name of this ancient city from a standing stone tablet and ancient characters. Tiangong Uruk. There is also a signature on the stone tablet below. The fifth king of Uruk, Gilgamesh. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 733. The Ancient City of Yurun. Next to the market. Rin, it's delicious. If it were at another place and time, the figure from behind would look like he was shopping alone. Just holding hands. But this is impossible. Miriam wore a close-fitting silver armor with blue lining, looking very heroic. Of course, it's not much different from her usual armor. Yulin is a bit more advanced. Iron was summoned from the seat of heroes with the class of caster, magician, and inexplicably put on a set of jet black robes. It looks a bit like a magic stick. There are even mysterious textures painted on the edges of the robe. Yulin looked carefully and recognized it. It was a little magic that could enhance defense. I can't comment without conscience, this set looks pretty cool. At this time, Miriam was passing by the market. Just passing by, she grabbed a piece of thigh meat from an unknown animal, which was roasted to a delicious aroma. Purely natural, no preservatives added. Yulin judged from the reaction of the dull ancestral hair on Myrian's forehead that it was considered a moderate delicacy for Myrian. Compared with his soul food, there is still a gap of hundreds of millions of points. But the best thing about street food is the large portions. Yulin raised her head hard and looked at the nearly 1 meter long thigh bone. Then he looked down at Miriam's flat belly, looked up, looked down, looked up. After repeating it several times, Yulin finally couldn't help but ask, "Do you, the Pendragon family, still have the royal stomach passed down from your ancestors?" "The throne? I am the king of knights." "The proud king of knights, Miss Miriam Artoria ex Pendragon," said vaguely. She didn't seem to have any flaws in what Yulin said. Never mind. Yulin didn't expect Myrian to be able to give any opinions on thinking based on her position in the trial. Yes. Trial. From Yulin's perspective, this time should be regarded as a different kind of trial. The ancient door at the bottom of the lake, if Yulin guessed correctly, should be the singularity recorded in the clock tower books. In this special scene, when the 7 apostles of Yulin entered through the Holy Grail ceremony, the tower party violently intervened, making this a special trial scene. But if it is a trial, why is there no main quest? Or, Yulin thought about the purpose and outcome of the Holy Grail War, and a hint of gloom appeared in her calm eyes. Tiangong Uruk, Uruk Town. That's it? When Yulin read the content on the stone tablet at the edge of the market, she vaguely understood the reason why Cecilia worked so hard to lead the 7 of them to UK Town through various methods. There is something special about UK Town, and the clock tower has known it for a long time. This was a situation that was set up early, waiting for Yulin, Miriam, and Gu Tianqing to jump into it. But why? How did Bartholomew do it? Among them, Yulin still had some doubts that she couldn't figure out. One thing worth praising is that all the simple natives in the market seemed to know that they came down from the highest point of the palace. Miriam carried 2 thighs on her shoulders for free. No need to exchange any items. Otherwise, they might not be able to bring out the treasures that the local indigenous people value. Anyway, not long after he started shopping side by side with Miriam, Yulin discovered something that surprised him. His identity, no, to be precise, it should be said that their identity has completely changed. They are no longer apostles, but a heroic spirit. From the panel to the attributes, from beginning to end, from top to bottom, from inside to outside, it has been transformed by the heroic soul into a reflection of the soul of a hero from the future and has become the incarnation of a hero. Heroic Spirit Panel. Yulin swiped her finger down to open a new version of the interface. This is a brand new version that Yulin has never seen before. So fresh. Heroic Spirit Yulin. Origin True History 2122 Ad. Profession Caster. Basic Attributes. Strength D+. Durable B. Smart C++. Magic A+. Lucky E. Charming F. Noble Phantasm X. Class Skills. Position Creation A. Prop Creation A. High Speed God Word A. Unknown Magic. Mind IB. Shooting Mastery C. Divinity E+++. Mixed D. Sword Mastery D. Inherent Skills. Following the Shadow, Haunted by Disaster, Bloodthirsty Catastrophe, Summon Mount Night Dire, Grasp of Annihilation, Shadow Kill. Holding a Noble Phantasm. The Mask of Laughter, Redemption and Destruction, the Apprentice's Suspended Ring, the Ordinary Remote Control, the Distant Utopia, the Ending Moment, the Worry-Free Paradise. While Miriam was chewing on her thighs heartlessly, Yulin took the shortest time to read the panel with the new rules carefully. On the whole, it can be summed up in 3 words: ran and egg. In fact, for each apostle, his physical quality and basic attributes are solidified. The apostle panel is just a digital panel that embodies the solidified qualities. No matter how outrageous the numbers on the panel look, if they change from decimal to binary, the apostle's own strength has not changed much. The heroic spirit panel is exactly like this. Among them, physical strength, dexterity, and magic power are equivalent to strength, agility, and spiritual measurements according to the knowledge instilled by the heroic soul seed. Among them, the evaluation of magic power is slightly different from that of spirit. The magic power column of the heroic spirit includes the evaluation of psychic energy value. The AE evaluation scale can be roughly understood as follows: A is extremely excellent, B is generally excellent, C is average, D is better than nothing, and E is the same as nothing. In other words, among Yulin's panel attributes, magic power has reached the extremely outstanding rating, while the others are average. Average, really average. This is in line with the positioning of the spiritual side. Yulin's side. Look at the others. Durability literally means physical strength and toughness. Being rated B seems to be inseparable from the self-healing ability that comes with his unknown bloodline. In short, it is the level of resistance to beating, and it is rated as generally excellent. Wait, why did Charming get an F rating? Didn't it mean that the lowest level is only E? What is the concept of F? Yulin felt puzzled. It also felt a little outrageous. Class skills, there seemed to be a little bit more than 100 million. Yulin read down patiently, the article was a bit long. Position creation is one of the knowledge that Yulin was instilled when he sat on the throne of heroes. As for prop making, Yulin was a little speechless. When he closed his eyes and recited prop making silently, recipes for various delicacies flashed through his mind. Damn it, is this class skill specially prepared for Miriam? Damn it! Yulin took a sneak peek and saw that Miriam, who was smiling as she was eating, suddenly became less angry. Forget it. Just think of it as, to increase your favorability. Maybe it will be used someday. Because of Yulin's experience in Gugu Town, he has a deep understanding of this. The eye of the mind seems to be because Yulin has mastered the killing skills and has the ability to easily see through the opponent's weaknesses. Shooting mastery seems to be the hidden weapon skill of the three-legged cat learned from Mo Rendi, but Yilin has long since discarded it. Mixed blood, these two words always give Yilin the illusion of being ridiculed by the panel. Huh? Divinity? What the hell? Yilin herself felt puzzled. Could it be related to blood? Strange. As for the sword mastery, forget it, just pretend that Yilin didn't see it, it's not something to look forward to in the first place. That unknown magic caught Yilin's attention. Could it be referring to the crystal pattern technique? Or the Dharma of freedom? Look further down. The intrinsic skills column contains Yilin's usual skills, so they can be copied directly without further explanation. Noble Phantasm is somewhat interesting. Among the basic attributes of heroic spirits, Yilin's evaluation in the field of Noble Phantasm is X. Is it because there are too many noble phantasms? Large. Live well? Noble phantasms, in addition to being the equipment of a heroic spirit during its lifetime, can also be a miracle materialized by the Holy Grail through the heroic spirit's deeds and legends. After becoming a heroic spirit, Yilin's storage space could no longer be opened. The only things that can be brought into this world are spirit-enchanted weapons, parasitic weapons, companion equipment, and two strange non-level props. Yilin speculated that it was because serious equipment could not adapt to the rules of this trial, so it could not be brought in. Thinking about it carefully, apart from the fact that the warehouse full of crystals could not be brought in and caused some losses, the rest did not have much impact on Yilin's strength. After thinking about it carefully, he found that other people were in the same situation, and Yilin was no longer so entangled. Yilin suspected that those who could be brought into the trial must at least be epic level. If Yilin hadn't forced the pair of underwear onto Lao Pan's butt before leaving Hating City, he might have been able to confirm his speculation because of the pair of Louis Lucky shorts. All in all, this heroic spirit panel is more like an application letter unique to the heroic spirit than an attribute panel. What is written above is the deeds and resume of a hero. The final moment, the worry-free paradise. After reading the long application form, Yilin noticed that there was a strange place at the very end. Something seems wrong. Yilin pointed her finger. What's wrong with you? Myrian elegantly wiped her greasy white hands with a silk scarf and waved them in front of Yilin's eyes several times. Yilin came to her senses. At Myrian's feet were two clean and smooth thigh bones. There wasn't any scraps of meat left. Yilin was in a daze during the second half. He really didn't notice what method Myrian used to chew the two thigh bones so cleanly. Hiccup Miriam was so full that she couldn't help but burp. After hiccuping, she instantly realized that this behavior was very indecent and inconsistent with her status as the King of Knights, so she lowered her head, expressionless, and changed the subject. Your expression just now was ferocious. Excuse me, Ren, what happened? What happened? Myrian asked bravely after eating. Ferocious, ferocious. Is there something wrong with your wording? Yilin seriously suspected that there was something wrong with the education system of the British Empire. Yilin rubbed his face vigorously. He had just been staring at the final moment, the worry-free 11 paradise in a trance. He thought of many things, and he might have revealed his serious side unconsciously. Soon, Yilin's expression returned to normal and asked Myrian about the situation on the panel. Originally, the attributes of an apostle were everyone's biggest secret. But first of all, the two of them were familiar with each other on their journey, and they were almost comrades in arms. Yilin's question was not unexpected. Furthermore, Yilin asked with a little skill. He asked if there was anything special about your panel, not the specific attributes. Unexpectedly, Myrian actually didn't hide anything and told Yilin her basic attributes. Strength B, magic power B, durability A, dexterity A. That's a bit outrageous. Wait, what did you say? Luck A? Noble Phantasm A++. Yilin had a stupefied expression. He felt that Miriam's rating was ridiculously balanced. The plus and dash in the evaluation represent a significant increase or decrease in some cases, referred to as breaking the rules. Just like Yilin's dexterity, it is only rated C under normal circumstances. But once he opened the portal without practicing martial arts and almost teleported, he was directly rated as ++. In other words, Miriam's strength is very stable and balanced, with no blind spots or weaknesses. It turns out that there really is an almost perfect hexagonal warrior in the world. Especially the luck value. To be honest, if Yilin didn't know that the luck value broke through the lower limit and he could become stronger, he would be extremely envious at this moment. As for the noble phantasm A++, Yilin actually remembered that day in Hating City, Miriam's move to pierce the subspace with a sword. It is very possible that the noble phantasm rated A++ is that curry stick. Because after becoming heroic spirits, Yilin and Miriam lost most of their functions as apostles and only existed in the world as heroic spirits. It took them a lot of effort to find Gu Tianqing in a crowded place. Yilin was still a little angry about Gu Tianqing's disobedience to orders in Wukai town, but as for Gu Tianqing's mysterious attributes, Yilin thought about it and found that there seemed to be something that could be used, so she put aside her anger. Stayed. No attacks for the time being. What did you find? Yilin stepped forward and asked. Gu Tianqing smiled slightly, gently stroking the curly hair on her forehead with her white gloves. I took a walk around. Judging from the costumes of the residents and the rich copper and pottery here, it is very likely that it is a prehistoric civilization that only exists in textbooks. Uruk. Oh. The Uruk civilization, which dates back more than 5,000 years ago, is equivalent to a tribe. Of course, the so-called history is limited to the level of research and speculation. The leader of the tribe is named Gilgamesh. By the way, you should have noticed it. Those stone tablets. But what's strange to me is that the sophistication of the bronzes here and the power possessed by the residents are completely inconsistent with historical research. Stop talking about this nonsense. What else? Perhaps, there is always a little difference between fantasy and reality. Gu Tianqing smiled and shrugged, turning a blind eye to the sharpness hidden in Yilin's words, and continued to laugh. Let's just pretend that we have entered a trial. In this trial, there should be a hidden main mission. At present, we have not received any relevant missions. Yilin nodded. We have the same view. There are two possibilities. One is a simple survival mission, just survive. The second, our main mission will be coming soon. Although the two have personalities that are not easy to deal with, the communication between them is always smooth and they can easily understand each other's subtext. After Yilin finished speaking, Gu Tianqing pointed to a tall and exquisite stone statue of the goddess surrounded by the crowd. There are two places in the city that only concern me. One is the palace with the temple and tower structure that we walked out of. The second place is the goddess statue, which seems to be the mythological belief of Uruk culture. But if I remember correctly, there is no mention of this matter in relevant historical documents. Yilin looked in the direction pointed by Gu Tianqing. Really? Circles of devout Uruk people almost filled the empty square. This mine is at the back of the palace, in front of the stairs at the back. Because when Yilin left the palace, she walked in the direction of the market, so she missed this place. In the center of the square, there is a statue of a goddess with a solemn face. Although the statue of the goddess is made of complete stones, it is purely hand-sculpted. But the people of Uruk seem to have terrifyingly exquisite craftsmanship, carving the solemn goddess statue's facial features so lifelike. Very realistic. It was so realistic that the more Yilin looked at it, the more familiar it seemed. Suddenly, Yilin's pupils shrank suddenly. He stared hard at the face of the goddess statue, his mouth slightly opened, and his pupils suddenly dilated after shrinking sharply. He only felt a chill on his back and was sweating heavily, as if someone had naughtily stuffed a bunch of ice cubes into his clothes. After a few seconds of silence, Yulin activated Shadow Follower and turned into a shadow, easily sneaking into the crowd of people kneeling on the ground and praying devoutly, and came to the statue of the goddess. Under the statue of the goddess, a word is carved in ancient and simple characters. Only one word. That is the name of the goddess. Hope. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Xueshi. Chapter 734. Hope. In this strange world, in this strange era, Yi Lin saw this familiar word. He couldn't believe it to be a coincidence. There can be no such coincidence. The god Uruk believes in is 11. It's 11 ER. Although the statue of the goddess is not clearly carved. Not as good as high-definition uncensored photos. But it was undeniable that Yi Lin could faintly see the shadow of Xiao 11 in those solemn facial features. When Yi Lin was in the world of Auranos, she learned that gods have different faces. Now a young woman, now a girl, now a child, now a mature woman. Perhaps to God, faces are not something static. Maybe, even men and women can change easily. In any case, Yi Lin saw Xiao 11's goddess statue at this moment, at this place. So, what does this place mean? Was it an accident that they came here? Or does it have some special meaning? If we say, this is the only singularity that exists in the world, a container that has been stripped, independent, and sealed from the normal timeline. In other words, did what was about to happen in Uruk really happen 5,000 years ago? This is 11's past. A long past. Yi Lin began to wonder if he came here just because of the layout of Barth Marrow and the clock tower. Gradually, as Yi Lin's understanding of the world deepens, he understood one thing. There are no coincidences in the world. If there really is, then it must be a destiny that is intertwined by countless threads and ultimately leads to destiny. Ironically, at this moment, Yi Lin actually remembered Gu Tianking's smiling question. Do you believe in fate? When Yi Lin was shocked, confused. Woo! The long and heavy sound of the horn resounded throughout Uruk. The people of Uruk who were worshipping the statue of 11 devoutly, chanting words and chanting mantras repeatedly, all raised their heads and looked towards the palace when the horn sounded. The residents of Gilgamesh. At the same time, for a moment, everything was silent. Whether you are praying, still doing business in the market, or those who are playing around, whether young or old, or male or female, they all fell silent while the horn sounded continuously. All the people of Uruk moved in unison, slowly stood up, and at the same time looked at the top of the temple tower structure palace. At this moment, the magnificent palace located at the top of the temple tower became the focus of the entire Uruk. At the top of the palace, a golden totem shines in the sunlight. A man walked out of the palace step by step in silent depression. It's Gilgamesh. The half-meter-high staircase seemed like just a small step to him. He was calm and collected, looking at the world with a cold eye. In the intertwined sound of horns and dead silence, creating a heavy and strange atmosphere unintentionally, Gilgamesh's footsteps seemed out of tune with the entire world. But I don't know why, it fell on this strange man. It seemed that he became the focus, and it was so natural. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Gilgamesh's movements were obviously very slow. But his figure dropped half a meter with 1 step, and in the blink of an eye, he was halfway down the stairs. Behind Gilgamesh, circles of space ripples appeared silently, and flowing golden light emerged from the ripples. Golden light flowed like water on Gilgamesh's surface, and when it solidified, it turned into a pair of golden armor. Step by step, when Gilgamesh reached the ground, the armor had just completed the process of equipping it. Pretending. Yulin lowered his head, mentally giving a fair evaluation of Gilgamesh's performance. But if I had to give this guy a score, Yulin decided to give it full marks. He no longer needed to save points to prevent Gilgamesh from becoming proud. His pride was written on his face, as if the whole world owed him money. Gilgamesh, who was wearing golden armor, looked at the faces of Yulin and Miriam. But his eyes only glanced for a moment and did not stay for long. At some point, in addition to Gu Tianqing, the priest, and the Sonic woman, Governor Baal, all came here. They also heard the sound of the trumpet. In silence, the assembly was completed. However, all senior apostles who have gone through countless trials and finally survived and become extraordinary apostles are all too familiar with trials. They all smelled the main mission. The sound of the horn is like a signal. It means, he's here to cause trouble. Gilgamesh waved his hand, ripples flashed, and countless golden chains clattered from the palace. A figure covered in blood fell to the ground in a panic. His body was covered with bloody holes and hang marks. It's red hair. That's okay. I thought it was who it was. The heroic spirits from another world bowed their heads and remained silent, pretending they didn't know each other. The red hair seems to have a high durability attribute. To put it simply, it can withstand beatings and grass. After he was released from the restraints of the chains, his muscles exerted force and he bounced off the ground. But when he was free, his first reaction was not to settle the score with Gilgamesh, but to stand aside obediently and remain silent. Yulin noticed that the red-haired injured and bloody body was shaking slightly and clenching his fists. There was a faint sound of gurgling teeth coming from him. It was obvious that his inner world was not as peaceful as he appeared on the surface. The anger affected his physical and mental health. After the atmosphere in Uruk suddenly changed, Yulin forced down the doubts in her heart. Let's deal with the next situation first. Gilgamesh's height is not outstanding, but he is wearing golden armor, and his hair is soft and fluffy, adding an extra centimeter out of thin air. Coupled with his crazy temperament, he looks a little bit majestic. Everyone did not dare to express their anger. When the shining golden Gilgamesh threw his bloody red hair on the ground, the people of Uruk knelt down one after another. King! 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 Tens of thousands of Uruk people knelt on the ground and shouted the king's name. Gu Tianqing, Sonic Girl, and Governor Baal, who had knelt down once before, were a little reluctant, but as apostles, they knew very well that in the face of absolute strength, this bit of dignity was worthless. Moreover, I have knelt down before, breaking jars and smashing them. I thought in my mind that I would just kneel down on the grave once, and it was no big deal if I only showed respect. The red-haired man was repaired, and he looked more honest on the surface. He gritted his teeth and knelt down. On the contrary, Miriam, Urin, and Kotomine Justice stood on the same level as the king, and seemed a bit outstanding among the group of kneeling people. Gilgamesh said expressionlessly, I once again tolerate your arrogance. Yo! In front of his people, he seems to be saving face. Urin noticed this. Flat body. After saying that, Gilgamesh walked straight along the empty road and climbed onto the city wall. The people of Uruk stood up, and amid the rapid sound of horns, they quickly put on their armor, held spears in their hands, and lined up in order. Yulin and Miriam looked at each other, nodded, and followed Gilgamesh to the city wall. The sky, I don't know when, darkened. There was obviously no cloud in the sky, and it was still daytime, but above the head, the light unknowingly dimmed several levels. No one thought this was an illusion, but understood that this should be some kind of phenomenon, a precursor to something about to happen. The atmosphere was solemn and depressing. Groups of neatly equipped Uruk soldiers followed closely behind, lining up on the city wall, ready to go, also waiting for something. Only the heroic spirit group who had just arrived had no idea what was going on. The trees were full of fruit, and they looked confused. Yilin also felt strange. This trial was indeed extremely weird. In the prompt at the beginning, it was clearly stated that new rules would be introduced, and there were also serious plot prompts. After officially coming in as a heroic spirit, I never received any reminder about the main quest. Although Yilin has encountered similar types of trials before that require certain conditions to be met in order to trigger the main mission, there are always traces to follow. For now, Yilin could not get any more useful information except feeling the atmosphere around her that was like before the war, etc. War atmosphere? Yilin suddenly frowned. They waited on the city wall for 10 minutes. Just in silence. An interesting smile appeared on Gu Tianqing's face, and she secretly whispered in Yilin's ear. I just discovered something very interesting. Do you want to know? Hey, but I think you will find out soon. This kind of suspense is not interesting. If you want to say it quickly. Hurry up. Yilin glared at Gu Tianqing. Our spiritual energy value, that is, magic power. Gu Tianqing was very smooth this time, but it seemed that the development of things would always make Gu Tianqing difficult to deal with. When Gu Tianqing was about to reveal the answer, Gilgamesh, with a cold face, suddenly shouted coldly, "Be quiet." Gu Tianqing closed her mouth instantly. Yilin raised her head, looked at the sky, and her pupils shrank suddenly. The dark, cloudless sky tore open a crack without warning. Inside the crack is deep and boundless darkness, but in the darkness, there is a faint blue light, bit by bit, vying to squeeze in from the crack. At the same time, in the deep dark cracks, red eyes opened from the cracks almost in no particular order. As the crack extended infinitely in the sky, more and more eyes opened inside, becoming more and more dense. 1,000. 10,000. 100,000. Million. In the blink of an eye, the scale of the cracks was so exaggerated that it was difficult to describe in words. If it was night at this moment, then the gap that opened out of thin air would look like a bright Milky Way. The cold red pupils that opened inside were like those twinkling little stars, densely packed. It was supposed to be a wonderful and spectacular scene, but neither King Gilgamesh, nor the 7 heroic spirits, nor the people of Uruk who were breathing suppressedly had time to appreciate it. Because, when countless eyes appeared in the depths of the crack, everyone suddenly had the illusion of being shot back and forth by solid sight, cold, slippery, and sticky sight. Magic cannon. Activate. Suddenly, Gilgamesh's voice broke the uncomfortable silence. Magic reloading, magic cannon ready. He gave an order, and then, inside the Uruk city wall, the sound of gears turning, accompanied by tremors, was heard. The ancient mechanism drove the stone slabs on the city wall away, and long-barreled cannons with unique shapes appeared on the city wall. On the body of the cannon, incomprehensible lines were carved. Gilgamesh did not need to give further instructions. The palace magician in charge of each magic cannon began to cover the cannon with his palms and inject corresponding magic power into the magic cannon. Am I stupid? The people of Uruk were used to it, but the 7 modern living heroic spirits from 5,000 years later, when countless magic cannons appeared on the city wall, they all cried out in their hearts, Wait a moment. This is a prehistoric civilization 5,000 years ago. The level of this technology tree does not seem to be consistent with actual history. Which expert said that the prehistoric aborigines thousands of years ago still lived a primitive life of eating hair, drinking blood, and wearing no clothes? Stand out. See if I don't beat him to death. Emission. Dazzling beams of light shot out from the magic cannon and blasted towards the huge crack in the sky. Boom. The ground was trembling, the city walls were trembling, and the sound of tens of thousands of magic cannons being fired simultaneously made the 7 members of the heroic spirit team seem to be watching a century-level fireworks show at an extremely close distance. Thousands of beams of light shot straight into the sky, converging into a few more concentrated and condensed beams of light on the way, and sank into the cracks. Within the crack, a soundless light exploded. The imagined big explosion did not happen, but in the cracks, the eyes that scanned the land with naked eyes, the red light emanating from their eyes was extinguished in this wave of magic cannons. Until now, if the 7 members of the heroic spirit group do not understand what happened, then they are really no different from being mentally retarded. This is a war. Although none of them could confirm whether this war with exaggerated and outrageous scenes existed in real history. But what is certain is that from the moment they entered that door, they experienced this war personally as heroic spirits, at this very moment, in the ancient civilization Uruk. On one side of the war are the humans of Uruk and Gilgamesh. On the other side of the war, there are monster creatures that appear from the cracks and don't know where they come from. On the city wall, Kotomine crossed his arms, not knowing whether it was excitement, fear, or other strong emotions welling up in his heart. I saw him shaking uncontrollably, almost losing his balance and falling from the city wall. His lips were pale and his eyes were full of disbelief. How is that possible? This is the age of gods. The age of gods only exists in legends and fantasies, and even the authenticity cannot be tested. No wonder the magic in the air is so abundant that it is unimaginable. This is the age of the gods. It is the age of gods where gods appear in ancient classics. How could we descend to a place like this as heroic spirits? This is impossible. Nothing is impossible, Yilin said calmly. When he saw Xiao 11's goddess statue, he already had a bad premonition. His tone at this moment was so calm that he didn't sound like a human being. Because, we are already here. After a wave of magic cannons are fired, there seems to be a cooling time, and it takes a certain amount of time to reload the magic power. From the cracks in the distant sky, countless densely packed small dots fell on the distant horizon like heavy rain. The bottom shell trembled again, and the messy footsteps seemed to be beating the fragile land hard. Countless black spots fell on the ground, like a pitch-black tide, rapidly approaching the city of Uruk at a speed visible to the naked eye. Yilin squinted her eyes and looked into the distance. As the black tide approached, he gradually saw clearly, those black spots, where were the small dots? They were clearly monsters with blades covering their heads and bodies. They had different shapes and looked like primitive beasts. They landed on all fours and ran wildly on the ground. After the black tide of beasts, they set off rolling sand and rose into the sky. It's a beast tide. Countless beasts. The tide of beasts is attacking Uruk city from all directions. Each monster varies in size. The small ones may only be the size of canines, but the large ones are comparable to the nearly extinct giant elephants in the real world, with long tusks dripping with fishy mucus. Every monster in the herd seems to be from a different race. But as the herd approached, Yilin and others soon noticed that each monster had a red eyeball in different places on its forehead, body, and back. That eyeball was like a tumor, clinging to the monster's body. This is the only thing they have in common. Haha, bring me some trivial pleasure, you bastards. Facing the sudden attack of beasts, the arrogant Gilgamesh, who was wearing golden armor, had a bigger smile on his face, giving people the impression of becoming more and more arrogant. Listening to Gilgamesh's laughter, even Yilin, who was always calm, couldn't help but have the slightest urge to beat him. Golden light ignited in Gilgamesh's eyes, his golden armor shook, he waved his big hand forward, and laughed loudly. Be happy. Tremble. Be joyful. Roar. For this king, for Uruk, listen to the last screams of mankind, look at the tainted sky, and witness the ugly appearance of the gods with your own eyes. For this, give up your humble lives? Weak servants. Saber, Lancer, Rider, Berserker. The proud King Gilgamesh began to call names according to rank without mercy. Among the 7 heroic spirits, the expressions of the 4 people whose names were called changed slightly. Go to War. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 735. The siege began. Facing the mighty beast tide, military orders are like mountains. In a daze, Yilin had the illusion that she was playing a tower defense game. This game is called Guard of Uruk. They are about to usher in the first wave of siege monsters. Everyone can see how Gilgamesh treats the redhead. That's why their expressions changed. Who dares to refuse? He might die. After a brief silence, the 7 heroic spirits adapted to Gilgamesh's roll call method as quickly as possible. It seems that the name of the heroic spirit is not important to him. The 7 ranks correspond to 7 types of arms with their own characteristics. They are: Saber the Sword Knight, Lancer the Knight of the Spear, Archer the Bow Knight, Rider Cavalry, Caster Magician, Assassin Assassin, Berserker Berserker. This is obviously not a serious Holy Grail war. A serious Holy Grail war consists of 7 arms. Within the limited scope of summoning the Holy Grail, a team is formed by the Master and the servants. The 7 teams engage in a brutal melee. The one who survives in the end will get the Holy Grail. That's how it should be. But now, their master is all Gilgamesh. They were also inexplicably summoned to the Age of Gods recorded in the magician's books. Came to this battle. Their enemies were obviously no longer each other, but the beasts in front of them and the aliens in the sky. Their identities are more like the humanoid weapons summoned from the throne of heroes by Gilgamesh. But something doesn't make sense. Gilgamesh looks awesome. Without even moving his fingers, he raised his eyelids and directly tidied up the red hair of the top 100 person in the real world. This level is beyond imagination. What makes Yilin feel strange is that such an awesome person, King Gilgamesh, summoned 7 of them from 5,000 years in the future. In addition to being able to follow Gilgamesh's thighs and shout 666, what else can it do? This is one of the things that makes Yilin confused. Military orders were issued. Corresponding to the rank, the expression has changed. Miriam remained silent and looked at Yilin habitually. Yilin slowly shook her head. Yilin was afraid that Miriam would misunderstand and thought that he shook his head to let her refuse. With Miriam's temperament, she might draw her sword decisively and chop it into Gilgamesh's face, which would be a big deal. So Yilin took advantage of Miriam not understanding the meaning of his eyes and said softly, "Come on, be careful." Miriam nodded, finally completing this brief eye contact. After all, they are not human beings, so it is normal for them not to be in touch with each other. Along the way, Miriam learned that Yilin was extremely insidious and good at planning. So she didn't hesitate, put on her silver armor and jumped off the city wall. Miriam's class is Saber, which is the Knight of the Sword. Apart from Miriam's class, Yilin didn't know the corresponding classes of other heroic spirits. The red-haired man's complexion alternated between pink and black, extremely ugly. He didn't know what his bad luck was. Ever since he came to Uruk, he had been targeted by Gilgamesh everywhere, and his mentality was about to collapse. But at this time, it was not easy for him to have an attack. Jody Solomon glanced at the rushing herd from a distance, laughed loudly, and jumped off the tower. Another. Among the 7, Yilin was the only one who had never had any contact with a woman with the ability to move at supersonic speeds in the real UK town. She snorted coldly and looked unhappy, but she also jumped off the tower obediently. Yilin used this to speculate on their corresponding ranks. Michelle. At this time, Kodomine was still in panic, his tight lips twitched slightly, he hesitated for a moment, and still shouted loudly to the woman downstairs in UK town, "Michelle, be careful. This is the Age of Gods." Oh, Yilin finally knew the other person's name. The woman whom Kodomine called Michelle did not answer, and did not even look back at Kodomine. There was a flash of light in her right hand, and a sickle-like weapon with an uneven surface that seemed to be made up of densely packed small parts appeared in her hand. She slung the scythe over her shoulder and said nothing. Alas! On the side, Gu Tianqing sighed softly. Sure enough, the divination told me that my luck is not good today. After saying that, Gu Tianqing moved his hands and feet, preparing to jump off the building. Yilin stared, feeling something was wrong. According to Gilgamesh's roll call, sword level, spear level, mad level, and cavalry level are all obviously suitable for close combat. It can be seen that Gilgamesh is not losing his temper to Blind Gil, but intends to let the heroic soldiers with good melee capabilities come out first to block this wave of beasts. But the weather is fine? What's your rank? Gu Tianqing smiled. Originally, today's divination fortune was not ideal, but the unexpected expression on your face made me feel that everything is not that bad. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I walked out of the heroic soul seat with dignity. The one who came out was Lancer. After saying that, without waiting for Yilin to express her stance, Gu Tianqing jumped off the city wall with quick movements. It's not just Yiren. When Gu Tianqing jumped off the city wall, the dull hair on Miriam's forehead trembled slightly. She was surprised. During this journey, Gu Tianqing made no other contributions except wearing gloves, fake smiles, playing cards, and grabbing food. Now Gu Tianqing jumps down, implying that she is a melee apostle? This is a bit outrageous. It shouldn't be possible to fake it? Yilin frowned. It stands to reason that the heroic soul constellation should be adapted to the class based on personal abilities and experience. Of course, apostles have many tricks and can be adapted to more than one job rank. Take Yilin as an example. Among the abilities he has, he can adapt to the assassin class, the cavalry class, and even the archer class, which is famous for its long-range attack capabilities. Yilin can also get a little bit of it. Sighed. But in the end, Heroic Soul chose to let Yilin come to Uruk as a magician. Obviously, the Heroic Soul constellation recognized Yilin's suitability as a magician, which far exceeded that of others, and also exceeded Yilin's other types of abilities. But Gu Tianqing, why can't he be related to the Lancer? Yilin really couldn't imagine the scene where Gu Tianqing suddenly took out a big gun and swung it to death. It was too unconventional. It is simply a doubt in the world. But Gu Tianqing had already jumped. Yilin couldn't ask in detail. Now he could only observe Gu Tianqing's performance on the battlefield with curiosity. Yilin looked around, observing everything in front of him. This place is full of weirdness. Yilin didn't dare to let down her guard. Gilgamesh's voice spread across the battlefield, extremely clear, with magic power assisting it. Under the command of Gilgamesh, groups of soldiers wearing ancient armor, small hollow sandal-style combat boots, and holding spears followed 4 heroic spirits and stood ready on all sides of the Uruk city wall. Although the 4 heroic spirits have little experience on the battlefield, the Uruk soldiers are obviously professionals. They can even lead the heroic spirits around to prevent them from getting lost or escaping. As the herd approached, Yilin finally had an intuitive estimate of the number of the herd. Each side of Uruk is roughly balanced in terms of quantity. There are about tens of thousands of running monsters on each side. The Uruk soldiers led by the 4 heroic spirits were all in standard 20-square formations. Each square formation was composed of 100 soldiers. In other words, each city wall was defended by 2,000 Uruk elite soldiers. Every city wall is 2,000 vs 10,000. In terms of numbers, Uruk was at an absolute disadvantage. After dropping these monsters into the cracks in the sky, the eyes flickered in the deep cracks, and there was no other movement. Testing. After thinking for a moment, Yilin understood the enemy's plan. Uruk's opponents seemed to be intelligent aliens, not just wild monsters who only know how to fight, which is even more difficult. Noob. Yilin called by Xiao out. Everyone had spirit-possessed weapons, so Yilin didn't need to hide them. He just called Bai Xiaoai out to act as a high-altitude vision. When Bai Xiaoai appeared, he was instantly stunned by the epic battlefield in front of him. But after a while, she, who was used to big scenes, quickly calmed down, stopped talking, and flew high into the sky. It was a rare appearance, but she worked hard. Today, she could not be compared with that little Misa. Our mother-daughter team is the best. Yilin didn't know that Bai Xiaoai was secretly encouraging and cheering her up. With the help of Ling's vision, Yilin had a commanding view of the entire battlefield. Oh! Gilgamesh raised his head, his blonde hair was flying, and his chin was raised proudly at a 45-degree angle. He glanced at Bai Xiaoai in the air, sneered with a crooked mouth, and said nothing. Nearly 40,000 monsters surrounded the city of Uruk. At a glance, the black beast tide and the strange eyes of each monster swept over them, exuding an aura of despair. But every soldier, including the residents in Uruk, did not show even a trace of fear in this situation. The soldiers who did not go out with them, as well as the Uruk people in the city, were lying on the ground, muttering something. If you listen carefully, you will hear clearly that they were turning over and over again, mumbling only two names. One of them is King Gilgamesh standing on the city wall, crossing his arms and pretending to be silent. Another name is the god they believe in, 11. Yilin paid attention to everything around her. He was thinking of two things. Has everything he has been experiencing so far been buried in the past and resurrected by the power of the Holy Grail, or have they really traveled 5,000 years ago, experienced an ongoing war, and are becoming part of history? Another thing is, where is the god 11 they call now? Still alive? No, it must still be there. Otherwise, he would not have experienced those kinds of experiences in reality 5,000 years later. If 11 is in this world, then where is she now? Does she know that she comes from 5,000 years in the future? Does she know what happened 5,000 years later? The doubts are mounting. While Yilin was thinking, the beast tide was approaching, and the war was about to break out. Woo! On the city wall, professional horn soldiers, under the command of King Gilgamesh, blew the horn of attack. Boom! To the west of Uruk town, Myrian was the first to rush out with an invisible blade in her hand, shaking the ground with deft steps. She seemed to have taken a step, but in the blink of an eye, she had crossed a distance of nearly 100 meters, and charged into the beast wave with one person and one sword. Hiss! Myrian's wrist shook, and invisible sword energy flashed in the tide of beasts. Hundreds of monsters of different sizes were dismembered into pieces in the blink of an eye. What? Myrian's performance shocked Yilin, who was watching. Although the ability of the beast tide was unknown, Myrian's sword, both in terms of speed and attack range, far exceeded Yilin's imagination. In a few breaths, Myrian had already killed several people in the beast wave, and the smelly blood spread all over the floor. The soldiers who followed behind had thick blood on their feet and sang loud and high-pitched war songs in their mouths as they fought with the beast tide. Wrong. Yilin moved her eyes away from Miriam and looked elsewhere. East. The red-haired man was determined to die, but in desperation, he rushed into the beast tide. But when he charged, he failed to control his strength for a moment. With one step, a deep pit appeared, and he fought with the beast tide one step at a time. Wherever his fist passed, the monsters were crushed into pulp, which was very violent. The red-haired man was shocked at first, then ecstatic, laughing wildly while tearing the monster apart with his hands. His expression was refreshing and joyful, and it looked delicious. Wrong. Yilin's frown deepened. South. Gu Tianqing smiled, and like a bolt of lightning, he burst into the center of the beast wave in an instant. Behind him, a blindfolded vengeful spirit wearing a blood-stained dress disappeared in a flash. The resentful spirit held a hammer in one hand and a half-meter-long iron nail in the other. There was a grey and ominous aura in front of the sharp nails, and it pierced into the tide of beasts. Any monster that was pierced by the nail would stand there for a moment, and the next second it would fall to the ground in pain, rolling, twisting, and twitching, with all the blood vessels in its body exploding. Not long after, a monster that was in good condition was stabbed. After a while, he stood still in place, dead with blood vessels all over his body. Gu Tianqing broke in easily, took a stab, and then broke out easily. His movements, speed, and reactions were completely incompatible with the abilities that a mentalist should possess. North. Michelle, who has the ability to move at the speed of sound, holds a huge scythe, and moves at high speed among the beasts in the shape of lightning in a figure that is difficult to see with the naked eye. With just one person's strength, she was able to smash the beast tide into pieces, allowing the Uruk soldiers who followed to harvest happily. Everyone has been strengthened. Yulin quickly came to this conclusion based on the performance on the battlefields on all sides. After thinking again, Yulin opened her own panel and looked down at the 3 command spells on the back of her hand. After thinking for a moment, Yulin said softly, "I see. He got it? No wonder the tower gave them a hint when they entered here. To adapt to new rules. The abilities of all heroic spirits have been greatly enhanced. First, after adapting to the new rules, they have been given corresponding class skills to make their respective combat capabilities more in line with their classes. In addition, King Gilgamesh did not simply mean contempt when he returned the 3 command spells to their true spirits. Among them, as the Master's command spell, in addition to forcibly commanding the heroic spirit to do whatever he wants, each command spell contains terrible magic power, which is enough to bring immeasurable growth to the heroic spirit. So, they became stronger with their rich hair. The reason is so simple. Gilgamesh, who had been paying attention to the battlefield, suddenly frowned slightly at this moment, conjured up a plain-looking clay tablet out of thin air, took out a pen and wrote something on it. Huh! Could it be that King Gilgamesh still has the habit of keeping a diary? Before Yulin could take a closer look, Gilgamesh quickly put away the clay tablet. Heh, boring temptation. While the fighting was going on the battlefield, Gilgamesh yawned, turned around and walked down the city wall. Amid the thousands of shouts and the worship of the people of Uruk, we walked towards the palace. Yulin was stunned. Just now. The moment Gilgamesh turned around, Yulin accidentally saw something. He witnessed with his own eyes that Gilgamesh's eyes changed from shimmering gold to ordinary light red. Wait a moment. Could it be that the eyes he had maintained before were a pair of magic eyes? Or is it the shiny and high-end kind? After 1 hour, the first wave of beasts that attacked Uruk were all wiped out. Outside the city of Uruk, there were piles of monster flesh and corpses. The first battle. It's over.